Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Superhero Iceberg. You guys waited long enough. It's finally time to talk about the Green Lantern Iceberg. Kind of insane that if you ignore the DCEU Iceberg, that the last time I did a DC Iceberg was in November of 2023. Oops. But whatever. If you end up liking the video, drop a like and comment about your favorite entry. It really helps the channel out. And if you end up wanting to support the channel, there's membership options. $5 a month will give you extended video previews, and I'll read your name out at the end of the video. And $7 a month will get you all of my videos early, iceberg videos, and more. I've got plenty of icebergs already made, and a bunch of superhero icebergs planned for the future, so stay tuned for those. But before I begin, I want to talk to you today about today's sponsor, NordVPN. Lantern rings can protect you from a lot of things, but one thing these rings can't protect you from is from people online who want to steal your information. Like an iceberg, the internet has a surface level, but in the deeper levels of the internet, things get dark pretty fast. You don't have to go to the dark web in order to have your information stolen. Websites on the surface web that don't have HTTPS encryption can be extremely dangerous, as people can steal your information, which can lead to your identity being stolen, your email being hijacked, and your accounts being broken into. Luckily, there's a way to defend yourself against people like this, and that's with NordVPN. With a click of a button, your IP address will be hidden from websites and people wanting to steal your data. And with NordVPN Threat Protection Pro, your information can be protected without the click of a button, as NordVPN Threat Protection Pro will automatically scan websites for you and block phishing sites even when you're not using the VPN. NordVPN Threat Protection Pro has blocked over 300 million scams this year alone. And NordVPN Threat Protection Pro also works on more than just PCs. You can use iOS devices, Mac devices, Android devices, and more. Using NordVPN Threat Protection Pro on iOS devices and Android devices is extremely helpful, as a common way for people to steal your information is through unreliable public Wi-Fi. Protect your information with NordVPN, and use the link in the description and the pinned comment to get started. By using that link, you're not only helping yourself, but you're also helping me out, as it helps the channel out a ton. Now, on with the video. Mogo. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 188, released in May of 1985, Mogo is probably the poster child for weird Green Lantern members. As Mogo, as you can see, is a literal living planet. Fully sentient, too. He actually plays a huge role in the Green Lantern Corps, as he's the entity responsible for guiding the Lantern Rings to new candidates. Being a planet, Mogo does have some people who live on him, and Mogo's actually pretty okay with this, and has changed the climate on his surface to suit their needs. Though, that was only for a time, as he would stop letting people live on him after he was invaded by a bunch of aliens who stole his natural resources and polluted on him. Despite this, he would allow Green Lanterns to take vacations on him, which is a very nice gesture, but if I was a Green Lantern, I wouldn't want a vacation on a planet that is watching my every single move. With such an important job, this led to him being targeted by Sinestro and the Sinestro Corps during the Sinestro Corps War. A lot of Sinestros there. Luckily, the Lanterns were able to save Mogo's life. Though Mogo would eventually turn on the Lanterns who protected him during the War of the Green Lanterns storyline. Though he didn't betray the team willingly, he was brainwashed by the rogue Watcher, Krona, and Parallax. They then used Mogo's ability to send out lantern rings to create a brainwashed lantern army. By the end of this storyline, Mogo couldn't be saved, and he had to be destroyed. And so he was, and his floating corpse began orbiting Oa like Unicron's head in Transformers G1. Mogo returned in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 12, released in October 2012, where his history was very similar to his previous incarnation. We first see him destroyed after the events of this universe's War of the Green Lantern storyline. It's revealed here that Mogo isn't actually dead, and is actually the consciousness of two different people combined, a man and a woman, who were mated at the planet's core. Jon Stewart and Fatality, more on her later, would team up to travel across the universe to find Mogo's pieces, and upon finding them all and bringing them all together, Mogo was revived and rejoined his Lantern brothers and sisters, even becoming the new headquarters for the Green Lanterns for a time. It was also revealed that in this universe, Mogo had a sibling planet named Raga, and after Raga murdered all of the aliens living on his surface, Mogo decided to kill his brother. Oh, and you're probably wondering how Mogo came to be. Like, how did he become a Green Lantern? That's a good question. As for his powers, Mogo is literally a planet, so he can control the gravity and weather on his surface. He can also travel through space and has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, like the ability to create energy constructs. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Green Lantern Emerald Knights, Batman Brave and the Bold, Green Lantern the Animated Series, and DC Universe Online. Green Lantern 2. As mentioned in the DCEU Iceberg, 2011's Green Lantern was intended to be the launchpad for a DC cinematic universe. However, due to Green Lantern doing pretty mediocre in terms of box office results, and very poorly in critical reception, it was decided to start the cinematic universe with Man of Steel instead. And part of this original plan was a sequel to Green Lantern. And with plans changing, the sequel to Green Lantern was cancelled. We don't know too much about what Green Lantern 2 would have been like. We know that Sinestro would have played a major role in the film, as the film's mid-credits scene showed him becoming a Yellow Lantern. We also know that the film's sequel was going to be written by Greg Berletti, Michael Green, and Mark Guggenheim, 3 of the 4 writers of the first film. These 3 were also writing a Flash film that was cancelled, and this film would have featured a cameo from Ryan Reynolds' Hal Jordan at the end of the film. You can learn more about that film in the Flash Iceberg. Part of the reason why we don't know too much about this cancelled sequel is the fact that it was cancelled in September of 2011, only a few months after the release of the first film, so it wasn't in development for very long. Green Lantern: Rise of the Manhunters. Technically, Green Lantern 2011 did receive a sequel, that being Green Lantern: Rise of the Manhunters. Rise of the Manhunters is notable for not only being a sequel to the 2011 film, but it also is the only Green Lantern video game ever made. The game was released on multiple different consoles, with the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game being done by Double Helix Games, while the Nintendo 3DS and Wii ports were done by Kryptonite Games, and the iOS port was done by Other Ocean Interactive. The game is about Hal Jordan, Kilowog, and Sinestro defending Oa from a Manhunter invasion, which I guess implies that the film's mid-credits scene takes place after this game, as Sinestro's still a Green Lantern here. Hal and friends travel the galaxy in order to fend off the Manhunter invasion, while also investigating rumors of a traitor in the Green Lantern Corps. You'd think it'd be Sinestro, but nope, it's actually Amensur, Abensur's son. Hal and friends beat him up and the day is saved. The game is a beat-em-up with some flying sections that are just glorified rail shooter sections. The game also allows you to play as Sinestro, as the game's co-op mode allows the second player to play as him. The game also features Ryan Reynolds reprising his role as Hal Jordan, and Michael Jackson reprising his role of Ganthet from the film Green Lantern Emerald Knights. No, not that Michael Jackson. Rise of the Manhunters received very mediocre reviews at the time, with players and critics alike saying that while the game wasn't horrible, it wasn't anything to write home about. It was a slightly above average movie tie-in game. Here's a really annoying fact about the game. There's a free comic-inspired skin for Hal Jordan released for the game on the Xbox 360, but because the Xbox 360's store has shut down, it's now impossible to get this skin. Power Ring. First appearing in Justice League of America issue 29, released in August of 1964, Power Ring, real name unknown, is from an alternate reality, and is basically just what if Hal Jordan was evil. In this universe, instead of the Justice League, there was the Crime Syndicate of America. The group would terrorize their world for a while before deciding to take on other realities, which led to Power Ring to face off against Green Lantern. They would be defeated, but would return several times and battle the Justice League again and again, and they would always lose. That was until Crisis on Infinite Earths, in which Power Ring and everyone else in his reality was killed. A new Power Ring would debut in the post-New 52 universe in Justice League issue 23, released in October 2013. This time around, Power Ring would be given a name, Hal Jordan. Yeah, they weren't really that creative with his name. Hal was a janitor at a factory creating jets for the US military. He would eventually become a spy and would one day get caught. The insane amount of panic he felt led to the Ring of Volthoom to choose him as its host, and so Hal was teleported away to a crashed ship, where the previous Power Ring was dying. He then gave Hal the ring, allowing him to become a Power Ring, and with this power, he didn't really do anything good. He joined his universe's crime syndicates of America and caused chaos. But Hal didn't exactly love being Power Ring. As it turns out, the Ring of Volthoom slowly kills its user over time, so Hal was constantly dying. He and the rest of the crime syndicate would invade the main DC universe, but Power Ring would be defeated by Sinestro, who cut off his arm. And so Hal died. Except not really, as his consciousness was then transported inside of the Ring of Volthoom, into a pocket reality where all of the previous Power Ring users were held. A strange, nightmarish green dimension made out of fear. The Ring of Volthoom would then travel to Jessica Cruz, and turn her into the new Power Ring. Though Jessica wasn't a fan of this, and tried to fight back, only for the ring to torture her into submission. Eventually, it even possessed her body, with her mind being sent into the green dimension, where she met Hal. Luckily, she was able to escape, and the Ring of Volthoom was destroyed, and Jessica became a proper Green Lantern. In the aftermath of DC Rebirth, Hal would return to life, but had his history rewritten. He was now part of his universe's Power Ring Corps, instead of being part of the crime syndicate. He would eventually be killed again. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, because he's literally just evil Hal Jordan. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in LEGO DC Supervillains, Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, and Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. Deleted scenes. Not every scene thought up for a film ends up in the final product. The same goes for Green Lantern films, and by films I mean his one live-action film, and the various films in which a Green Lantern makes a small appearance. Here's a list of some deleted scenes from Green Lantern-related projects. For Green Lantern 2011, very early on in the film's script, there were plans for Superman to cameo in the film, with the film's writer, Mark Guggenheim, hoping that Tom Welling would play Superman, which would be pretty weird, since Tom Welling already played him in Smallville. I guess he hoped that Smallville would be considered canon. Originally, the film's infamous CGI suit was supposed to be practical, but it was decided that this would be too goofy, and so they changed it to all CGI. The film was originally supposed to begin with a prologue set in 1993, in which we would see the events leading up to Martin Jordan's crash. A scene where Hector Hammond uses his powers to lift up a hamster running on a hamster wheel was cut. A scene in which Hal and Sinestro watch as various lantern graves are built was cut. A scene in which Hal saves Jason Jordan from Parallax was cut. Some of these scenes were restored and put back into the film in its extended cut. As for Justice League 2017, originally the film was going to end with an after-credits scene of Tomar Ray and Kilowog showing up on Earth to meet Bruce Wayne, which would set up a Green Lantern Corps film. As for the Snyder Cut, originally, Deadshot and Green Lantern were going to be shown as part of Batman's Resistance, instead of Deathstroke and Joker, but this was cut very early on in development, as it would cost way too much money to bring Will Smith back just for a single scene, and Warner Bros. Didn't want Snyder to use Green Lantern, as they had plans for the character. As for Superman 2025, originally Guy Gardner was going to have a different hairstyle, but Nathan Fillion requested that they keep the bowl cuts. Not much of a deleted scene, but there's not really much known about the film's deleted scenes as of right now. Black Lanterns. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 25, released in January of 2008, the Black Lantern Corps is a rather unique Lantern Corps, as unlike the other Lantern Corps, which are powered by emotions, the Black Lantern Corps is powered by death and the darkness of existence before the creation of the universe. Created by the embodiment of death, Nekron, more on him later, the Black Lantern Corps is made up of beings who are either dead or were previously dead, and once the ring has chosen them, their host goes crazy and tracks down those close to them in order to steal their hearts, so that Nekron can be fully revived. They're practically immortal, as if injured or even killed, they just heal themselves. They can only be truly defeated by a few things. The Black Lantern rings are vulnerable to willpower energy from the Green Lanterns, but only when the Green Lantern's ring is used with a ring from another Lantern Corps, such as the Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns. This works because the Black Lantern rings don't work off of emotion, so emotional energy makes their rings weak, which allows them to be destroyed. You can also simply just beat their bodies so bad that it takes a while for them to regenerate, and you can use this time to destroy their ring. Another way to defeat them is to use the White Light of Creation, which can only be used by White Lanterns, or if members of all of the normal Lantern Corps merge their emotional energy. Light-based powers, such as Dr. Light's powers, are also able to destroy the Black Lantern rings. This is because the Black Lantern rings are partially powered by darkness, so light is their natural enemy. When the Corps was first created, they weren't all that powerful. However, they quickly got more and more powerful, as when a Black Lantern kills somebody and takes their heart, not only is Nekron closer to being revived, but also all Black Lanterns are given a power increase. Also, you're probably wondering how the Black Lanterns can even exist, as Lantern Corps need a physical power source to channel the source of their powers. Well, the Black Lanterns did have a physical source of power: the Anti-Monitor. Nekron literally turned the Anti-Monitor into a Black Lantern power battery thanks to the Anti-Monitor's desire to wipe out humanity. Another important aspect to the Black Lanterns is the villain Blackhand. A longtime enemy of the Green Lantern, Blackhand was killed and turned into Nekron's connection to the physical world, meaning that Blackhand was basically the ultimate Black Lantern, and if defeated, then, well, Nekron's kinda screwed. Blackest Night. Releasing from June 2009 to May of 2010, and written by Jeff Johns, Blackest Night is not only a major Green Lantern storyline, but is also a pretty major DC event. The story is mostly known for being the story that popularized the Black Lantern Corps, and because of this, heroes and villains who are dead or have died in the past are turned into Black Lanterns. This included Superman, Hawkman, Batman, Martian Manhunter, Donna Troy, Wally West Flash, Green Arrow, Superboy, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Hawkgirl, Black Canary, Copperhead, Killer Frost, Maxwell Lord, Dr. Light, and the Top. This obviously caused mass chaos across the universe, as Lantern Corps from all across the color spectrum had to team up to prevent the Black Lanterns from wiping out the universe, as Nekron's goal was to find and kill the embodiment of life itself, the Life entity, which was hidden away on Earth by the Guardians. And if Nekron was able to kill the entity, then all life in the universe would die. And so the Lanterns and surviving heroes worked together and saved the day. But it wasn't easy. For example, Hal Jordan had to merge with Parallax in order to free the Spectre from the Black Lantern's control. Sinestro wasn't very happy with this, and for a time, turned against the United Lantern Front. Also, several heroes and villains are temporarily turned into lanterns, like Scarecrow, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Lex Luthor, in order to fight back against the horde of Black Lanterns. The event came to an end when Hal Jordan bonded with the Life Entity and revived several Black Lanterns as White Lanterns. Using the power of the White Lantern Corps, they were able to defeat Nekron and end the Black Lantern threat. Side note, remember how I said that Batman was a Black Lantern? Yeah, it's actually revealed that this wasn't actually Batman, but instead a clone. This series lasted for 9 main issues, but was really a lot bigger, with dozens of tie-in stories that were either one-shots or miniseries being released. While an important event, Blackest Night has only ever been adapted in DC Universe Online and DC Legends, though skins based on the event appear in Injustice Gods Among Us, Multiverses, and Batman Arkham Origins. White Lanterns. First appearing in Blackest Night issue 7, released in April of 2010, in order to defeat Nekron, Hal Jordan bonded with the embodiments of life and became the second member of the White Lantern Corps. Sinestro was technically the first, but he wasn't one for very long. Hal then used his power to free several Black Lanterns and turned them into White Lanterns. After the events of Blackest Night, the embodiments of life turns into a White Lantern power battery, which allowed the White Lantern Corps to survive, though everyone who had the White Lantern powers during Blackest Night, like Hal Jordan, Superman, etc., were not allowed to continue being White Lanterns. Instead, Deadman was chosen to be the sole White Lantern in existence, in order for him to find the new embodiments of life, with that person eventually being revealed to be Swamp Thing. And so, for a while, Swamp Thing would be the leader of the White Lanterns, a group that didn't really exist anymore, as Deadman had to sacrifice his life in order to get Swamp Thing to become a White Lantern. Kyle Rayner would become a White Lantern when he was able to master all 7 normal Lantern Corps emotions, and for a while, he was the only White Lantern in existence. Yeah, Swamp Thing stopped being one, though he would go back to being just a Green Lantern. During his time as a White Lantern, he would battle the entity Oblivion, a monstrous entity created by Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, greed, and anxiety. And in order to defeat this threat, a bunch of others were turned into White Lanterns as well. Though after defeating Oblivion, everyone but Kyle went back to normal. Kyle would return to being a White Lantern years later, when the villain Theros attempted to mess with the emotional spectrum in an attempt at gaining power. While Black Lanterns represent death and darkness, White Lanterns represent life and light. And because of this, White Lanterns are insanely powerful. Not only do they get all of their standard Lantern abilities boosted to the extreme, but they're able to heal themselves from fatal injuries. The White Lantern Ring also allows White Lanterns to spy on any Lantern Corps member they want. So it's kind of like the Patriot Act ring. Chip. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 148, released in January of 1982, Chip is a Helvanite Green Lantern, but he looks like a squirrel, so I'm just gonna call him a squirrel. Chip became a Green Lantern when the villain Dr. Ubix attacked his homeworld. During the invasion, the Green Lantern meant to protect that world's sector was killed in the fight. So, the Green Lantern Ring then chose Chip to lead the Resistance in his place. In the aftermath, he went off to go trade on Oa to become a proper Green Lantern. Chip lived his best life for a while, until Crisis on Infinite Earths, in which he lost pretty much everything. In the timeline created from the aftermath of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Chip found out that he was actually killed years prior, and his wife married his best friend. Nobody on his home planet knew who he was. So, pretty depressed, Chip left to go live on Earth, where he would work with various other Green Lanterns on a bunch of missions. Though he would eventually leave his friends when he sided against the Green Lanterns during a mission to the far future. Though he was still a Green Lantern, he just didn't want to live on Earth anymore. He traveled back to his homeworld in order to rebuild his life, but This didn't work, and Chip, I'm not joking, attempted to Avengers Endgame himself, only to be found by his friend and convinced to live. Chip would join back up with his friends and save the universe dozens upon dozens of more times. Just kidding. Shortly after he started hanging out with his friends again, he got ran over by a truck on an alien planet. Yeah, Chip literally became roadkill. He would be revived years later during the Blackest night event as a Black Lantern, but he would be killed off again by Guy Gardner. Surprisingly, Chip has yet to appear in the post-New 52 universe, though there is a character who's meant to be his successor, named Badge. As for his powers, well, he's a Green Lantern, so he has all of your standard Green Lantern powers. He can fly and create stuff with his power ring. His most unique ability was probably his enhanced sense of smell, which comes from the fact that he's basically an alien squirrel. As for Chip's appearances in media, he's appeared in DC League of Super Pets, Duck Dodgers, Green Lantern First Flight, Green Lantern Emerald Knights, Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters, Green Lantern the Animated Series, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. Amanda Waller in the 2011 film. So this entry is just going to be really quick, and honestly, probably shouldn't even be an entry. But, did you know that Amanda Waller is in the 2011 Green Lantern film? She's a very minor character and is played by Angela Bassett, and acts nothing like how Amanda Waller is usually portrayed. Here, she's just a generic government agent. She also dies in the film, which is pretty nuts. The first film of a DC cinematic universe was going to kill Amanda Waller off. Can you imagine if this film was successful and got, multiple sequels and, an extended universe? They wouldn't be able to use Amanda Waller at all. Anyways, just wanted to point out that she's in the movie, since, nobody seems to remember her being in it. Dex-Starr. First appearing in Final Crisis Rage of the Red Lanterns, released in December of 2008, Dex-Starr was originally nothing more than a joke. I mean, a cat Red Lantern is pretty goofy, but after being encouraged by both readers and writer Jeff Johns, Dex-Starr was turned from a background gag to a full-on character. Dex-Starr's origin is pretty sad for such a silly idea like a cat lantern. Originally named Dexter, he lived a normal life with his owner for quite a while. After their owner was killed in a home invasion, Dexter began living on the streets, but was eventually kidnapped by some human filth, who placed him in a bag and threw him off a bridge in an attempt to kill him. But as Dexter fell to the waters below, a Red Lantern ring chose him due to his rage and hatred, and so Dexter took the ring and became Dex-Starr. He then brutally killed the filth that tried to kill him, and then flew off and found the man who murdered his owner, and killed them too. As a Red Lantern, Dex became close friends with Atrocitus, with Dex-Starr essentially becoming Atrocitus's cat. Keep in mind, Dex-Starr isn't some alien cat. He's a normal cat, which means that he's not actually sentient. He's literally just a normal cat with Red Lantern powers. But that doesn't mean that he can't talk. Thanks to the ring giving him a universal translator, Dex-Starr's meows can be crudely translated into English, or any other language. Dex-Starr returns in the post-New 52 universe in Red Lanterns issue 1, released in November 2011, and he's basically stayed the same since there's not really much development you can give a normal cat. As for Dex-Starr's powers, he has all of your standard Lantern abilities, he can create things with his energy ring and fly, he's also got all of your standard cat abilities, like Nocturnal Vision and Enhanced Smell. As for Dex-Starr's appearances in media, he's appeared in Injustice 2, Justice League Action, Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, and DC Superhero Girls. The Fridge. Oh boy. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 48, released in January of 1994, Alex DeWitt was the girlfriend of Kyle Rayner, who became a close ally of his early into his career as a Green Lantern. She's notable because She lasted for like 6 issues before being killed in an extremely brutal fashion. In Green Lantern issue 54, released in August of 1994, the villain Major Force decided to troll Kyle a bit by brutally murdering Alex and stuffing her body into a refrigerator. Kyle would then find her body and, well, understandably loses it, and he almost ends up killing Major Force. Now, this fridge incident is one of the most controversial moments in DC Comics, as many found it to be rather sexist, as the whole storyline was basically, hey, here's a new female character, we're gonna kill her off as brutally as possible in order to develop a male character. She was less of a character and more just a plot device. This led to the term fridging being created, and it means exactly what you think. A female character being brutally killed or assaulted in order for a male character to get development. Some examples include Gwen Stacy in Marvel Comics, Aunt May in No Way Home, Rachel in The Dark Knight, Vanessa in Deadpool 2, Maximus's wife in Gladiator, Shelley in The Crow, Silver St. Cloud in DC Comics, Talia al Ghul in Arkham City, Batgirl in The Killing Joke, and Trish Daly in Infamous. Side note, Alex was one of the many characters turned into Black Lanterns during the Blackest Night event, and she was always seen inside of a fridge. Green Lantern the Animated Series. Releasing from November of 2011 to March of 2013, Green Lantern the Animated Series was made to tie in with the 2011 film, but it thankfully doesn't take place in the same continuity. The show followed Hal Jordan and friends battling various bad guys, ranging from the Anti-Monitor, Atrocitus, and plenty more. Sinestro was also in the series, but he wasn't a Yellow Lantern. Instead, he was a Green Lantern, and he's actually Hal's idol. Though that doesn't mean that Sinestro was a good guy. Bro did some very shady things. Interestingly, the show wasn't an origin story. When the series begins, Hal's already a well-established member of the Green Lantern Corps. The series is notable for being pretty good. I have personally never seen it, but it received very positive reviews at the time, and with it getting a great reception, it became Cartoon Network's longest-running DC series. Well, maybe it would have, if not for the fact that the show was cancelled after just one season, due to the live-action film bombing, and toy sales for the cartoon also not doing very well. This is because there weren't actually any toys for the show, but they were in development. Though, I guess because they weren't done in time, Cartoon Network decided to cancel them, so yeah, they had poor toy sales because, they didn't have any toys. Because of this, the show ends on a cliffhanger that'll never get resolved. Developed by Bruce Timm, you would think the series would get at least some kind of continuation, but nope. It's not in the DCAU, so it's not allowed to have a comic or film continuation. But that doesn't mean that the series didn't have some kind of impact on DC. Aya is an original character created for the show, and I would have been obsessed with her if I watched this show as a kid. In order to promote the show via the comics, or vice versa, Aya was introduced in the mainline DC universe in Green Lantern issue 65, released in June 2011, before the release of the show. Though it was just a very brief cameo. She would also make cameos in Justice League Action, the comic continuation of Smallville, and Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3. She would finally be introduced in the post-New 52 continuity in Green Lantern issue 24, released in June of 2025. It took a while, but it seems that the show's legacy will continue on with Aya. Emerald Twilight. Releasing from January of 1994 to March of the same year, and written by Ron Mars, Emerald Twilight is a massive Green Lantern story. While it only lasted a handful of issues, the story was insanely impactful. This is the story in which Hal Jordan becomes evil. Well, kinda. Shortly before the story, Coast City was pretty much wiped out by the villains Mongol and Cyborg Superman. They did this so that they could build a giant engine there as part of a plan to turn Earth into a war world, a mobile space station the size of a planet. Hal wasn't really a big fan of his home being wiped out, and so he went on a rampage for a bit. And in his anger, he then hung out with Green Arrow for a mission. But after that mission, Hal rebuilt the entirety of Coast City using his ring. Not just the buildings and the roads and the trees, but also the people, the animals as well. This put a huge strain on his ring, and he would be contacted by a guardian who tells him that using the ring like this is against the rules. But Hal is just like, I'm gonna do it anyways. He then travels to Oa in order to steal most, if not all, of the energy from the Green Lantern's power battery to rebuild Coast City. On his way to Oa, he defeats a ton of his friends and steals their lantern rings. In order to prevent him from enacting his plan, the Guardians pull an enemy of my enemy is my friend and release Sinestro out of prison in order to help them. Sinestro is then killed by Hal. Hal then kills Kilowog and the Guardians of the Universe. He then takes all of the energy from the battery and announces that his name is Parallax. Turns out, Parallax was actually being held prisoner inside of the battery, and when he sensed Hal's rage and sorrow, Parallax began to corrupt Hal. With his possession of Hal becoming complete upon Hal reaching the battery, Hal would then fly off and become a reoccurring bad guy for a little bit. Oh, and Sinestro didn't actually die. The Sinestro that Hal killed was just an illusion created by Parallax as part of his plan to fully break Hal. All of this would continue in the Zero Hour storyline, in which Hal tries to rebuild the DC Universe using his newfound power. Luckily, Hal is defeated, and Hal would later sacrifice his life to save Earth in the final Night storyline from 1996. While an important storyline, Emerald Twilight is fairly controversial, as while people are okay with the idea of Hal going bad for a bit, the initial storyline of him turning evil was only like 3 issues. So many people found the story to be incredibly rushed. Also, keep in mind, the stuff about Parallax influencing Hal before he took out the battery is actually a retcon from the miniseries Green Lantern Rebirth from 2004, which also reveals that Sinestro is to blame for awakening Parallax. So for about a decade, people just thought that Hal went crazy. Because of how controversial the story is, it's never going to be fully adapted into a film, show, or game, though elements of the story were incorporated into the film Green Lantern Beware My Power. Alan Scott. First appearing in All-American Comics issue 16, released in July of 1940, Alan Scott is both the first Green Lantern we're introduced to, and not a Green Lantern at all. While his superhero name is Green Lantern, he didn't actually get his powers from the emotional spectrum, but instead from the Star Heart, a crystal containing a ton of magical energy that was created by the Guardians. One day, the Star Heart crash-landed on Earth in China, while attached to an evil Green Lantern named Yalan Gur, who died while entering Earth's atmosphere. There, a lamp maker did, well, his job, I guess, and turned the crystal into a lamp. For thousands of years, it was handed off to various people, until eventually it reached Alan Scott. The Starheart spoke to him, and explained to him a way to turn it into a ring that he could wear, which would give him a ton of power, and so Alan followed the lamp's advice, and turned it into a ring, becoming the superhero Green Lantern. For years, Alan would battle bad guys and supervillains, including his arch-nemesis, Solomon Grundy. Yeah, Grundy actually started out as an Alan Scott's Green Lantern villain. During his early days as the Green Lantern, he would join his fellow superpowered friends and form the Justice Society of America. And as the Justice Society, they would battle not just supervillains, but also the Axis powers during World War II. Yep, Green Lantern's a World War II veteran. One of his missions he went on involved him being ordered to assassinate an infant that was being experimented on by the Germans, but Allen refused. After the war, they would continue to fight crime until the early 1950s, when the US government started claiming that the Justice Society were communist sympathizers. This led to the team disbanding for about a decade. But Allen would continue to fight bad guys and live his best life, even getting married 2 different times and having some kids. Eventually, Allen would switch his superhero name to the Sentinel, and as Sentinel, he would battle his own son, who became the villain Obsidian. Luckily, though, Obsidian would stop being a bad guy, and Alan Scott would go back to being Green Lantern. He would eventually return to the JSA and work with them until the modern day. He was able to do this because he was blessed with super slow aging by some radiation from the Shadowlands, a spooky alternate dimension where most of DC's magic-based heroes and villains source their power from. The JSA wasn't the only group that Allen was a part of. He also joined up with Checkmate, a spy organization founded by Amanda Waller. He didn't last very long in this group, because Allen didn't exactly share the same morals as his boss. Eventually, it would be revealed that the star heart in his ring was only a fragment of the rest of the crystal, and one day, the rest of the star heart would land on Earth, where it would be revealed that the star heart wasn't exactly a force for good, as it drove Allen insane and made him almost destroy the world. Luckily, Allen was stopped, and he was returned to normal. Allen's story would hit another speed bump when the villain Scythe snapped Allen's neck. And tragically, it turns out that Scythe was the infant that Allen decided to spare during World War II. Luckily, Allen survived the attack, and could be healed from this injury, but if he was, then the Starheart would take full control over him again, and this time, Allen doesn't know if he'd be able to be snapped back to normal. Allen would eventually sacrifice his life to defeat the villain Darken by using all of the Starheart in his ring. Alan Scott would be introduced in the post-New 52 world in Doomsday Clock issue 7, released in November of 2018. He was brought back to life with a modified history by Dr. Manhattan. In this new reality, Alan was gay, and after the death of his boyfriend, Alan would check himself into Arkham Asylum in an attempt at curing himself of being gay. There, he met a trans woman who became a very close friend. But then she would be lobotomized, which would cause Alan to snap and free everyone from Arkham, and that's when the Starheart found him. And so, he became the Green Lantern, fought in World War II, and was forced to join the Justice Society of America. Yeah, he was blackmailed into joining by J. Edgar Hoover, who threatened to expose the fact that he was gay. And it's during this time he began to pretend to be straight, and got married a few times and had kids. Though he would eventually come out publicly, and would continue to work with the Justice Society, this time by choice. As for his powers, his Starheart ring gives him the ability to create energy constructs, create illusions, do magic blasts, phase through objects, fly, and move pretty fast. Oh, and he's also weak to wood. No, really, wooden objects are basically his kryptonite. This is because that evil Green Lantern that crashed on Earth with the Starheart had his ring's weakness turned to wood by the Guardians, so that humanity would be able to defeat him, and this somehow bled over into the Starheart fragment that got attached to him. As for Alan's appearances in media, he's appeared in Batman the Brave and the Bold, Young Justice, the DCAU, Smallville, Justice League The New Frontier, DC Universe Online, and Stargirl. Weakness to yellow. For a long time, the kryptonite for Green Lanterns was simply the color yellow. It's part of the reason why the Yellow Lanterns, or the Sinestro Corps, were so dangerous. It's not like the color yellow would send a Green Lantern into a coma or something, but the idea was that the Green Lantern rings couldn't affect anything yellow unless the Green Lantern is able to accept their fear and move on from it, as the color yellow is the symbol for fear in the DC universe. So once they do that, they can then affect stuff that's yellow. It's a very silly weakness that hasn't really been a thing in the comics for decades. It was also given another lore reason during the Emerald Twilight storyline. Remember how Parallax was trapped in the Green Lantern battery? Well, because of that, Green Lanterns had a tough time fighting things that were yellow. After that storyline, all Green Lantern rings made didn't have this yellow weakness, since Parallax wasn't in the battery. The Green Lantern. Releasing from August of 2003 to November of 2005, Duck Dodgers is a spin-off Looney Tunes cartoon about the hero Duck Dodgers, aka Daffy Duck, fighting bad guys in the 24th and a half century. This show was an adaptation of the short film of the same name from 1953, which was inspired by the radio drama Buck Rogers in the 25th century. While the show is remembered nowadays for its comedy and Queen Tyranny, one of the more interesting things about the show is that it had a full-on Green Lantern crossover, thanks to DC and Looney Tunes both being owned by Warner Bros. In a special double-length episode called The Green Lantern, which aired as the show's 9th episode, after accidentally getting a hold of Hal Jordan's Green Lantern suit and ring, Duck Dodgers is teleported to Oa and becomes the Green Lantern known as the Green Lantern. There, he works with Kilowog, Chip, Ganthet, and Catman Tui to defeat Sinestro. At the end of the episode, Hal Jordan shows up and takes back his costume and ring. Despite this being a one-off episode, the Green Lantern returned as a playable character in LEGO Batman 3 Beyond Gotham. Sojourner Mullen. First appearing in Far Sector Issue 1, released in January of 2020, Sojourner Mullen, aka Joe, lived a very tough life, as her family was extremely poor, and her parents hated each other, resulting in them getting a divorce. And she was also harassed pretty regularly by racists. In order to pay for college, Jo joined the US military, but she didn't last very long, as she saw the horrors of war and various other war crimes, which led her to quit. She then became a cop, and one day on the job, she saw her partner beating a suspect almost to death. She reported him, and he was fired. Just kidding, he was given paid leave, and instead, Jo was fired, because the police found that she was tagged in a social media post about Black Lives Matter. Oh yeah, Jo also witnessed 9/11 as a kid. Like, she was there. Like I said, she had a very tough life. She would eventually be found by a guardian who offered her a job as a Green Lantern. Seeing as she didn't really have anything else going on for her, she agreed. But she was also given a challenge: to make a difference in the universe within a year, or she'd be kicked off the team. And she was able to do that with her very first job. But it wasn't easy. She was sent to a planet hosting 3 warring societies who took drugs to control their emotions so that they wouldn't go to war and kill each other. There, she had to solve a murder mystery, which led to a full-blown conspiracy. She would eventually stop the conspiracy, and the planet began to stop taking the emotion-controlling drug. Afterwards, she would join up with the rest of the Lanterns and go on various adventures. As for her powers, she has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, though her ring is a little bit different from other rings, as it can charge by itself. It doesn't need a power battery. But this also means that her ring isn't nearly as powerful as other Green Lantern rings. As for her appearances in media, she's only ever appeared in DC Superhero Girls. The Ultraviolet Corps. First appearing in Justice League Issue 2, released in August of 2018, the Ultraviolet Corps is a rather new Lantern Corps. Unlike most of the other Lantern Corps, the Ultraviolet Corps gets its power from the invisible emotional spectrum, and this power is channeled through a star known as Umbrax. And Umbrax is alive. Guys, I began the video with a living planet. A living star is not that crazy. When Umbrax was unleashed upon the galaxy, it quickly began recruiting members to the Ultraviolet Corps, leading to Sinestro and even John Stewart both joining. The Ultraviolet Corps are all about invisible stuff. They get their power from the invisible emotional spectrum. They're named after ultraviolet light, which humans can't see. And their rings are actually invisible, because they don't have rings. Instead, they have ring-shaped tattoos on their finger. Umbrax and the Ultraviolet Corps are drawn to people who are self-destructive or very negative towards themselves. They're kinda like a lantern cult, with John and Sinestro having to free themselves from their influence. As for their powers, the Ultraviolet Corps has most of your typical lantern abilities, but they do have a few unique abilities. The most interesting being the ability to make people hate themselves and act upon their repressed desires and feelings. Hector Hammond. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 5, released in April of 1961, Hector Hammond is one of Hal Jordan's earliest foes. Hector was just your average criminal until he found a meteorite fragment. He figured out that the meteorite was highly radioactive and mutating things around it, so he decided to add even more criminal charges to himself by kidnapping some scientists and forcefully having them mutated by the meteorite. This gave the scientists extreme intelligence, and with this intelligence, Hector had them create a bunch of new inventions and gadgets. He would then sell his gadgets, and he would become a fairly successful businessman. Hal figured that something was off, so he had his friend dress up as the Green Lantern to bait Hector into revealing his evil schemes. And this plan worked, as Hector turned his friend into a chimp. That's when the real Green Lantern showed up and beat up Hector. He then had his friend and the scientists turned back to normal. Hector would then show up again to cause trouble, but this time, instead of mutating others, he decided to mutate himself. And so, he gained a bunch of abilities, but he also lost the ability to move and talk. His head also grew to an enormous size. Luckily for Hector, he was able to mind control people, so he continued to do crime using his newfound mind powers. Though Hector's origin would be completely retconned following the events of the Infinite Crisis storyline. Now, he was a consultant for an aircraft company who knew Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris prior to becoming a villain. He would become a bad guy once he investigated Abin Sur's crash sites, as Abin Sur had the meteorite on him. So, Hector got his mind-altering abilities and a giant freakish head. He continued to battle the Green Lantern, and would even become an Orange Lantern for a bit, after, literally eating the Orange Lantern power battery. Hector would return in the post-New 52 universe in Superman issue 18, released in May of 2013. His backstory is extremely similar to his old backstory, and in this universe, he's often being held captive or being used by people, like Amanda Waller, Star Labs, and the Hive Queen. But luckily for Hector, he's actually kinda returned to normal. He still has his powers, but he no longer looks like a monster. He's also regained the ability to move. As for Hector's powers, he can mind control people and animals, use telekinesis, fire mental blasts, and create illusions. And since he's a genius, he can have his mind-controlled victims build him crazy inventions and weapons. What's interesting about his powers is that they're actually fueled by something: the positive thoughts and memories of others. Yeah, so in order to get more powerful, he steals people's happy memories. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, the 2011 film, and Teen Titans Go. Identity Crisis. Releasing from August of 2004 to February of 2005, and written by Brad Meltzer, Identity Crisis is one of the most infamous DC storylines ever written. Now, technically, this isn't purely a Green Lantern story, but Hal and Kyle are both involved in it, so I'm gonna talk about it. The story is centered around a murder. Sue Dibney was the elongated man's wife, and a beloved character in the DC universe. working alongside a ton of heroes over the years, such as Barry Allen Flash and Starman. Fans loved her, writers loved her, everyone loved her. So she was killed off in Identity Crisis. But it gets so much worse. The story reveals that years prior to her murder, Sue was R-worded by the villain Dr. Light. And in response, Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, Hawkman, Black Canary, Green Arrow, and the Atom had Zatanna wipe Dr. Light's memory of the incident. Not just that, but the team also had Zatanna wipe other people's minds in the past as well, in order to keep their identities secret. So not only was Sue killed, but she was also R-worded. Yeah, you can see why the story is rather infamous. It turns out that Sue was killed by the Atom's ex-wife, Jean Loring, who really wanted to get back together with the Atom, so she used the Atom's technology to shrink down inside of Sue's body to give her a minor stroke, with the idea being that this would lead to the Atom and the rest of the heroes becoming closer to their loved ones. This did not work, and Sue died. But anyways, another controversial aspect about this story is the whole mind-wiping thing, with many people claiming that Barry Allen, Green Arrow, and especially Hal Jordan acted extremely out of character when they had Zatanna perform multiple mind wipes on people. Because of how controversial the story is, I doubt Identity Crisis will ever be adapted in any form of media in the future. But hey, who knows? One More Day was partially adapted into No Way Home, so anything's possible, I guess.
We'll return with more Justice League.
Avocado.
Get a big charge out of 2 summer blockbusters. Try the Subway Turkey and Bacon Avocado, packed with a powerful avocado boost. Grab the green and get ready for The Green Lantern, starring Ryan Reynolds, opening in theaters June 17.
Yeah.
We now return to Justice League.
John Stewart was going to be the Lantern in Injustice. Originally, Hal Jordan wasn't supposed to be the main Green Lantern featured in the Injustice series. According to concept art for the game, John Stewart was planned to be the main Green Lantern for the game early in its development. This was changed, most likely, because John has never been a Yellow Lantern before in the mainline DC universe, while Hal Jordan has literally been Parallax before. So it just makes more sense for Hal to be the main Green Lantern in the story. Luckily, John Stewart does appear in both Injustice games, as skins for Hal. Original casting. Just like every other film or show ever made, some actors just didn't make the cut when they auditioned for roles in the 2011 Green Lantern film. That, or they declined a role offered to them. Here's a list of some of the actors who either auditioned for roles, were offered roles, or were considered for roles, but for whatever reason just didn't end up getting the part. For Hal Jordan, Bradley Cooper, Sam Worthington, Chris Pine, John Hamm, Jared Leto, Henry Cavill, Justin Timberlake, Sebastian Stan, and Michael Fassbender were considered for the role. For Carol Ferris, Kerry Russell, Ava Green, Diane Kruger, and Jennifer Gardner were considered for the role. And finally, for Sinestro, Hugo Weaving and Jackie Earle Haley were considered for the role. The Javelin. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 173, released in February of 1984, Javelin, real name unknown, is a dude who should have been set for life. He was an Olympic athlete known for his skill at throwing javelins, but I guess being an Olympic athlete wasn't enough for him, so he took up the name Javelin and became a mercenary, working for various criminals who used Javelin's throwing abilities for all sorts of crimes. Mainly robberies, though. It was mainly robberies. Green Lantern would defeat him on one of these jobs, and so Javelin was sent to jail. But he wouldn't stay there for long, as he had a nice little deal with Amanda Waller, and he joined up with the James Gunn 2021 film squad. His first mission with the team was to take out Cersei during the War of the Gods storyline. More on that story in the Wonder Woman Iceberg. And during this mission, he would be impaled with his own javelin. Everyone thought he was dead, but nope, he somehow survived, and somehow escaped Waller's grasp, as he returned to doing mercenary work. At one point, he and a bunch of other villains attempted to take out Deadshot, but this didn't work out very well, and Deadshot literally blew Javelin up. But somehow Javelin survived again, and would eventually be captured by Waller and forced back into the squad, only to then get run over by a car. But he survived again, and again got away from Waller. His final job that we've seen had him working for Prometheus, and he ended up fighting the Justice League, only to be defeated by Supergirl because, obviously, what's he gonna do against a Kryptonian? And that was the last we ever saw of him. He hasn't shown up in the comics in over 15 years. As for his powers, he doesn't have any, but he's really good at throwing stuff. Not quite bullseye levels, though, because he can really only throw javelins, spears, and knives. Though some of his spears and javelins were tipped with explosives, but that's kind of it. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Batman Brave and the Bold, Justice League Unlimited, Arrow, and the DCEU.
Carry it for who? For what? What the heck? Who am I supposed to carry it for? This is so frustrating. He just told me I have to carry this javelin for a reason, but he didn't say why.
Harley Quinn becomes a bunch of lanterns. Being as popular as she is, Harley Quinn has gone on a bunch of different wacky adventures, and in some of these adventures, she's become a member of a Lantern Corps. In fact, she's been part of the Green, Black, Red, and Yellow Lantern Corps. In Sinestro issue 18, released in February of 2016, Sinestro and the Yellow Lanterns are defending Earth from the Paling, a cult aimed to remove emotion from the universe. And during this outing, a bunch of characters on Earth are given Yellow Lantern rings in order to aid in the defense of Earth. These include Scarecrow, Deathstroke, Wonder Woman, Constantine, Superman, and of course, Harley. She really enjoyed her time as a Yellow Lantern, and helped fend her home from the Paling, even using her ring to create a Batman construct to help her fight. Though her time as a Yellow Lantern was pretty short, only lasting a couple of issues. But later that year, in Harley's Little Black Book issue 2, released in April of 2016, Harley joins 3 different Lantern Corps. Yeah, she joins the Green, Black, and Red Lanterns all in a single issue. Kinda. The story begins with Harley buying a very special ring. This ring is a Red Lantern ring and a Black Lantern ring merged together. The ring ends up possessing Harley, giving her the powers of both the Red and Black Lanterns. She instantly starts causing chaos, which leads to Hal Jordan showing up to stop her. The two fight for a bit, and the fight comes to an end with a giant arm wrestling match. Before the arm wrestling match gets a victor, the original owners of the rings show up to reclaim their stolen property. They then take back the ring from Harley, which leaves her powerless. So Hal rescues her, but as he tries to bring her to the surface, Hal is knocked out. And just before this, Harley found out that the owners are going to destroy the Earth. In order to save herself, Hal, and the Earth, Harley takes Hal's ring and becomes a Green Lantern, and using the ring, she destroys the owners of the rings, saving the planet. Harley then asks Hal for a kiss. Hal agrees, and the two kiss, but Hal leaves when Harley grabs his butt. Soranic Natu. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps Recharge issue 1, released in November of 2005, Soranic Natu is Sinestro's daughter, and he loved her dearly. He actually became a dictator in order to reshape his world into a world that would be worthy enough for her to live in. Soranik's mother wasn't really cool with all of this, so she and her daughter bailed. Though Sinestro would find her eventually, and would spy on her, making sure that she was okay. Like her father, she too became a Green Lantern, but she wasn't super thrilled about it. Over the years, her people had begun to fear the Green Lantern Corps, thanks to her dad Sinestro, being evil and terrorizing his people with the ring. So when a Green Lantern ring chose her, she was terrified. She was also scared because the ring chose her while she was in the middle of performing surgery. Yeah, she was a neurosurgeon before becoming a Lantern. She only accepted the ring to help save her patient's life. And after the surgery, she was taken to Oa, where she refused to become a Lantern. Though she would be convinced to accept the ring shortly afterwards by Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner, and so she would go on various adventures with her fellow Lanterns, battling all kinds of foes, like the Anti-Monitor, Superboy Prime, and even her own father. Oh yeah, and around this time, she was fired from her neurosurgeon job, and actually kicked off of her home planet because everyone there thought that she had betrayed them by accepting the Green Lantern ring. This nearly drove her into a very dark place, but thankfully Mogo was able to convince her to chill. She also started dating Kyle Rayner around this time. As it turns out, at least according to the Star Sapphire Corps, Kyle is her true love, her soulmate. The two were madly in love, but DC eventually went, nope. Soranik would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern Corps Annual, released in March of 2013. Her backstory was mostly the same, and she was still dating Kyle. At least at first. The two broke up for a bit when Kyle became a White Lantern. There's also the fact that she was now a Yellow Lantern. Yeah, early into the New 52, she was captured by the Yellow Lanterns and turned into one of them at the command of Sinestro. She even became the Yellow Lantern, or Sinestro Corps' leader, and as their leader, she created an alliance with the Green Lanterns. But then the villain Sarko showed up. Turns out, Sarko is her and Kyle's son from the future. She would find out that he was her son after he was killed, and to make matters worse, Kyle found out about him before her and didn't tell her. So the two, who were just about to get together, did not get back together, and the alliance was called off. As for her powers, she has all of your standard Green and Yellow Lantern powers. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in Green Lantern Beware My Power, Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, and Young Justice. Well, kinda Young Justice. Robert Smigel's Green Lantern film. In 2004, Warner Bros. Hired Robert Smigel to write a live-action Green Lantern film. But the catch was, this film would be a straight-up comedy, bordering on parody. And so, Smigel wrote the film with the intention that Jack Black would be playing an original character, not Hal Jordan, obviously not Jon Stewart, not Kyle Rayner, not Guy Gardner, an original character who would be a reality TV star named Judd, who's chosen because he ate a bunch of severed animal heads for a TV show without any fear. This only happens as when the ring goes to recruit Hal Jordan, it malfunctions and it chooses Jack Black instead. So Jack Black has to prove himself as a Green Lantern, and by prove himself, Jack Black just goofs around with the powers of the Green Lantern. Some of the jokes from Smigel's film included a scene where Jack Black creates a Superman construct who spins the Earth back in time in the aftermath of Jack Black accidentally nearly ending the world. There was going to be a scene where he creates a race car bed for him to sleep in. There was also going to be multiple scenes of him creating a bunch of sex-related constructs. And he would create a giant Pikachu construct to battle the Legion, but he would have to get a little bit more serious when Sinestro shows up and tries to take over the world. Though, while Smidgel wanted Jack Black to play the main character, Jack Black actually turns the offer down. The script would get leaked online, and fans were not happy with it. This led to Warner Bros. Debating on whether or not they should even have this film be about Green Lantern. There were talks about the film being retooled into a story about an original superhero outside of the world of DC. Eventually, Warner Bros. Decided to just scrap the film, and instead develop a serious Green Lantern film. Jokero. First appearing in Infinite Frontier issue 4, released in October of 2021, Jokero is a member of the team Injustice Incarnate, a team of heroes and villains from all across the multiverse, brought together to work under Darkseid to protect their own realities. Jokero originates from Earth 32, and, as his name suggests, is Joker and Sinestro combined. Though he's way more Joker than he is Sinestro. He's got the powers of Sinestro and some of his personality, but has the appearance and most of the personality of the Clown Prince of Crime. He doesn't really do all that much in his few appearances. Mostly he just works with the rest of his team fighting various superheroes, including Justice Incarnate, a multiversal Justice League team formed to defend all of reality from multiversal threats. I honestly just wanted to include him because his name sounds like a lost Joestar. John Stewart accidentally kills billions. Releasing from December of 1988 to March of 1989, Cosmic Odyssey is a 4-part storyline in which the Justice League and other heroes team up with Darkseid and the New Gods to battle a sentient form of the anti-life equation. The story is notable for John Stewart making a bit of an oopsie. You see, shortly before this story, John's wife was murdered, and that left John, understandably, pretty depressed. So he wasn't exactly thinking straight. On a mission to the planet Xanshi with Martian Manhunter, John would feel like he needed to prove how powerful he was, and decided to trap the other John in an energy bubble in order for him to complete the mission alone. John would eventually stumble upon a bomb at the very center of the planet's core. Unfortunately for John, and more importantly the people of Xanshi, John couldn't do much about the bomb, as it was yellow. Now, if Martian Manhunter was with him, he would have been able to take out the bomb. And so, the bomb goes off, and John and Martian Manhunter are pretty upset by this. With the murder of his wife, and now accidentally being responsible for the deaths of billions, John was beyond depressed, and he almost Avengers Endgames himself. But he snaps out of it thanks to Martian Manhunter, and decides to do some good in the galaxy in order to make up for his mistake. Decades later, during the Blackest night event, the planet of Xanshi was reformed by a bunch of Black Lantern rings. John happened to be in the area, and so he investigated the planet, and battled a bunch of Black Lanterns there. Brother Worth. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 36, released in January of 2009, Worth is an insanely important Blue Lantern, as he's the second Blue Lantern to ever exist. And he's also one of the weirder Blue Lanterns, as he's literally an elephant. Okay, he's not actually an elephant, he's just an alien that looks like an elephant man. No, not the Elephant Man. Okay, he just looks vaguely like an elephant, okay? Design-wise, he's actually inspired by the Hindu god, Ganesh, who, by the way, is actually a real thing in the DC universe, like, he just exists. Anyways, Worth's main job as a Blue Lantern is recruiting new members to the Corps. He doesn't really do all of that much in terms of story, he just kinda like chills out in the Blue Lantern homeworld of Odom. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern New Guardians, issue 9, released in July of 2012. Unfortunately, Worth didn't really do all that much in this new timeline, as he was killed only after a few issues by the villain Relic. As for his abilities, Worth has all of your standard Blue Lantern powers, including creating energy constructs, flight, invisibility, etc. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Green Lantern the Animated Series and DC Universe Online. The Gambler. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 12, released in June of 1944, Stephen Sharp III is a man who was obsessed with luck. This came from the fact that his grandfather and father were both gambling addicts. His girlfriend even refused to marry him until he proved that he wasn't a gambling addict. But she was a bit of a hypocrite, as when some dude won a bunch of money via gambling, she instantly dumped Stephen and went off with him. And so Stephen quadrupled down on his obsession with luck, and decided to start gambling a bunch. Though he wasn't just making his money off gambling, he was also robbing places. This led to him being confronted by Green Lantern. He would be defeated, but would escape prison and become a reoccurring foe to the Green Lantern, even becoming a founding member of the Injustice Society of the World, though he finally met his match when he faced off against Las Vegas. Yup, after battling heroes for decades, he eventually became addicted to gambling in Vegas, only to lose all of his money. He then Avengers Endgames himself, though his bloodline would continue as he got married, which would eventually result in 2 grandchildren, Stephen Sharp V and Rebecca Sharp, both of which became villains, with Stephen Sharp V taking up the mantle of the Gambler, though he wasn't a Green Lantern villain, so that's all I'll say about him. The Gambler would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Superman Giant issue 2, released in April of 2020, where he hasn't really done anything. He's shown up in a few cameos, and that's pretty much it. Though there was another Gambler in the New 52 universe. First appearing in Green Lanterns issue 15, released in March of 2017, the Gambler was a cowboy-themed version of the villain who showed up to rob a bank, but was taken down by Jessica Cruz and Simon Bez. He's never shown up again. As for his powers, the Gambler doesn't have any, but he does have quite a few gadgets, including a Derringer that he modified to fire not just bullets, but also ammonia pellets and knockout gas. He's also pretty good at throwing knives, thanks to his years working in a circus. As for the Gambler's appearances in media, he's appeared in Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, and Stargirl. Arizia Robb. First appearing in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 1, released in May of 1981, Arizia is a rather young alien Green Lantern, joining the group as a teenager, and her youth is, mainly the reason why people know about her. Early into her career as a Green Lantern, she found herself working with Hal Jordan a lot, and she was really into him, but she was 14, so Hal obviously wasn't interested. But then, Arizia subconsciously used her ring to age herself up. And by age herself up, I mean her body, not her mind. So while, yes, physically she's an adult, she's still mentally 14. And not only that, but Hal knew her when she was a teenager. While at first, Hal wasn't interested in a relationship with her, he did eventually start dating her, which, I shouldn't have to explain to you how creepy that is. Yes, physically she's an adult, but, she's not an adult. She's a 14-year-old in the body of a 20-year-old. In fact, Hal even referred to her as a little sister at one point before dating her. But yes, he starts dating her, and they even bang a few times. This was a very controversial story decision for very obvious reasons. The two would eventually break up, but the damage was already done. Hal Jordan had dated a 14-year-old girl. Now, yes, she's from a planet where 14 Earth years are 240 years for her, But frankly, that doesn't matter, she's still 14. Also, it was retconned that she was actually 13 and not 14, so it just gets worse. It's around the time of this breakup that she loses her ability to use her Green Lantern ring, and so she tried to live a somewhat normal life, though she would eventually rejoin the Green Lanterns, only to be nearly killed at the hands of the villain Major Force. While the rest of the Lanterns believed that she was dead, she was actually just in a coma-like state. Turns out, her species enters this state in near-death situations in order to heal themselves. Cyborg Superman took her body and used it as a living battery in order to power an army of Manhunters. Luckily, she would be rescued alongside a bunch of other captured Lanterns by Hal Jordan. The two even kissed again, which is, Why, Hal? Why? Arisia would continue to go on adventures as a Green Lantern, taking part in storylines like the War of the Green Lanterns, Blackest Night, and the Sinestro Corps War. She would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern Corps issue 9, released in July of 2012. Thankfully, her relationship with Hal, while unfortunately still canon, is no longer brought up. Should also mention that both Guy Gardner and Kilowog have been shown to have some interest in her, which is very gross. They literally know that she's a kid in an adult's body, so why are they... Whatever. DC was just so weird with her for years. As for her powers, Arisia has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, plus she has that healing coma state that she can enter when she's near death. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Green Lantern First Flight, Green Lantern Emerald Knights, Duck Dodgers, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, and DC Universe Online. Martin Campbell's original Green Lantern film. Now you might be a bit confused because we already got his Green Lantern film, but it turns out the film that we ended up getting was a heavily modified version of his original plan for the film. Originally, there were plans for 2 more Green Lanterns to appear in the film, one of which would be a cameo, that being Guy Gardner. In the original plan, he was going to be a football player, and the Green Lantern ring would think about choosing him, only to fly off and choose Hal. The second Lantern was Alan Scott, and he was supposed to be a major character in the film. In this original version of the film, Alan Scott was the President of the United States and a former Green Lantern. At the end of the film, he would give Hal his blessing, though in later versions of the script, he was changed from being the President to being an agent of Checkmate. And the end of the film would have him offer Hal a job at the organization. He was planned to be played by Pierce Brosnan. For whatever reason, Alan Scott was removed from the film, and Warner Bros. Began to meddle with the film's script, and even post-production of the film, ultimately resulting in the film that we ended up getting. Goldface. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 38, released in July of 1965, Keith Kenyon was just your average dude, until one day he came across a chest filled with gold. He then subjected the gold to some ultraviolet light. This, combined with the fact that the gold had been heavily exposed to toxic waste, made the gold highly radioactive. So he melted some of the gold down and drank it. And so, the gold mutated Keith. Luckily for him, he didn't become some gross sludge monster like Hedora or the Toxic Avenger, but instead, he was just a normal dude, but with super strength and durability. Oh, and he also glowed gold. And because gold is pretty much just yellow, this kinda caused an issue for Hal when Keith started to go around doing supervillain stuff under the villain name Goldface. Keith also had daddy issues as he decided to become a villain, in part to spite his dad. Goldface would continue to be a reoccurring threat to the Green Lantern for quite a while, until he actually decided to work for the Green Lantern Corps, or should I say, a Green Lantern. During the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, Guy Gardner hired Goldface and some other villains to help him destroy a moon in the Antimatter universe, where the Anti-Monitor was born, in order to prevent Anti-Monitor from destroying their reality. They failed, and during this mission, Goldface was actually able to kill a Green Lantern, that being Tomar-Ray. Eventually, Goldface would get tired of fighting Green Lanterns, so he moved to Central City in order to become a Flash villain. But he eventually got tired of being a Flash villain too, so he just flat out retired from crime. By this point in life, he had gotten over his daddy issues, and so became a union organizer just like his father. Making his debut in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 50, released in June 2016, Keith was back to being a villain. He didn't really do all that much, though, because he was quickly killed by Tomar-Ray's son. Though he was somehow brought back to life at some point, as he was later seen battling Blue Beetle. As for his powers, Goldface has superhuman strength and superhuman durability. For a time, he also had the ability to use his radiation to transform anything into gold. He was also invulnerable to most of Green Lantern's powers, thanks to him glowing yellow, and also his armor that he wore was yellow. He also carried around a gun that fired gasified gold. I don't even think gasified's a word, but it was gasified gold. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in The Flash and Justice League Unlimited. Green Lantern Dark. Releasing from December of 2024 to, I believe, November 2025, Green Lantern Dark is an Elseworld miniseries. The world is in a post-apocalyptic state, with people struggling to survive their day-to-day lives. Doesn't help that this post-apocalyptic Earth is infested with monsters, like zombies, werewolves, dragons, big spooky spiders, and more. There's also a giant space worm, which is pretty nuts. Oh, and to make matters even worse, the sun's not doing so great, as a mysterious darkness is preventing the sun from shining on the Earth for more than a few hours. And also, pretty much every hero on the planet is dead. The story follows a new Green Lantern, a woman named Rena Mori, as she tries to stay alive and keep the last pockets of humanity safe. The story takes place in an alternate version of Earth 9, the Tangent DC universe, so a lot of Rena's lantern powers come from the Green Lantern of Earth 9, a woman whose name has never been revealed, but she's basically a goddess of death. She can resurrect people for a time to do her bidding, teleports, and she doesn't really age, though she will age rapidly if she's not holding her Green Lantern. Now, this series is still ongoing, so that's all I'm going to say about it. If you're interested, go check it out. Green Lantern vs. Aliens. Releasing from September to December of 2000, and written by Ron Mars, Green Lantern vs. Aliens is a 4-issue crossover miniseries in which Kyle Rayner battles a hive of xenomorphs. Years prior to the beginning of the main story, Hal discovered the xenomorph threat and battled them, but he didn't want to wipe them out, so he instead trapped them on Mogo. A decade later, a spaceship crashes into Mogo, resulting in the xenomorphs getting a whole bunch of new prey. Kyle and several other lanterns are called to investigate the crash, and when they arrive, they discover a woman named Crow. She's the ship's first officer, and for some strange reason, she's the only person that the xenomorphs didn't capture, and, do the whole, facehugger thing. It's later revealed that this is because she's an android. Pretty soon, most of Kyle's Lantern squad is captured by the xenomorphs, and to make matters even worse, Kyle's ring falls off his finger, meaning that Kyle now has to fight these xenomorphs without any lantern powers. Kyle, Crow, and Kyle's only other lantern ally, Salak, battle the xenomorph threat, and eventually discover the Queen. Kyle's able to get back his ring, and he's able to rescue the survivors of the crash, along with a few of his lantern allies. Though Crow is destroyed and Salak is killed, Kyle then wipes out the Xenomorphs in order to prevent them from harming anyone else. Necron. First appearing in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 2, released in June of 1981, Necron is the physical manifestation of death. His origins are a bit of a mystery, but the leading theory is that he's existed before the universe was even created. For most of his life, Necron was trapped in the lands of the unliving, which is just a fancy name for purgatory. Necron was cool with ruling over purgatory until he found out about the world of the living. After finding out about its existence, he decided that he wanted to leave and rule over this new world. So he resurrected the villain Krona, who, by the way, is a rogue guardian who is responsible for the multiverse. He gave Krona a zombie army and sent them after the Guardians of the Universe and the Green Lantern Corps so that he could create a breach in reality that could allow him to escape. This almost worked, but thanks to Hal Jordan using the souls of his dead allies, Necron was defeated, and the breach in the reality was fixed by the Guardians. But that wouldn't stop Necron, as he continued to try and escape. One of these attempts had him resurrect a bunch of dead Green Lanterns. That's right, he created the Green Lantern Corps. Yeah, they were kinda the Black Lanterns, but not really. He even at one point sent the armies of Hell onto Earth, which required Alan Scott and Dr. Fate to team up to stop him. His most notable attempt at taking out the world of the living was, of course, Blackest Night, which I already talked about. He almost succeeded in this attempt, but would be defeated after Blackhand was turned into a White Lantern. Necron made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 20, released in July of 2013. Hal Jordan actually became a Black Lantern for a brief period of time, but was able to control himself, and he freed Necron to help him battle the First Lantern. More on him later. And after Necron defeats him, he's rewarded by being sent back to the world of the unliving. He was freed from his prison by Pariah, the sole survivor of the original DC multiverse, which predates all of DC Comics. He wanted to rebuild his original multiverse, so he created the Dark Army, a group of cosmic beings from across the multiverse to help him, and Necron was one of these beings, though he would eventually be defeated and sent back to his dimension. As for Necron's powers, he's immortal, so he can't be killed, only trapped. He can also revive people as zombies or Black Lanterns, and use what's basically just Force Lightning. And since he's basically the Grim Reaper, if you touch him, you die. His one true weakness is that he can't exist in the world of the living, so in order for him to do anything, he needs to tether his spirit to somebody's soul, such as Blackhand during the Blackest Night storyline. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in DC Legends, DC Universe Online, and Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure. Oh yeah, there's also another Necron who fought Green Lantern. First appearing in Justice League of America issue 128, released in March of 1976, he actually predates the other Necron by 5 years, and is an alien who feeds on the fear of death. And as it feeds, the bigger it gets. Power rings can time travel. The power rings of the Lanterns are immensely powerful, and one of their strongest abilities is one that we rarely see, that being time travel. Yup, every single Lantern from every single Corps can time travel, in theory at least. We've seen Hal Jordan use his ring to manipulate time dozens of times. From traveling to the past, traveling to the future, creating entire time tunnels, and even fighting people from the future by sending his attacks into the future. He doesn't do this very often because, well, one, it's a kind of an easy way to win fights, and that makes for boring stories, but also because it takes an enormous amount of willpower to do. But theoretically, if a lantern has enough willpower, or hate, or love, or whatever, they can travel through time. Even Alan Scott has some form of time travel, although since his powers come from magic, that's a lot more understandable. Hard-traveling heroes. From Green Lantern issue 76, released in April of 1970, to Green Lantern issue 89, released in February of 1972, Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, hang out with each other and travel across the United States. While not originally having a name, this era of Green Lantern comics has since been given the name Hard-Traveling Heroes, and it's a very well-received series of stories, as Hal and Oliver travel across the United States, battling all sorts of bad guys, like racism, poverty, cults, fascism, company corruption, environmental issues, and drug addiction. The story is mostly known for Green Lantern issues 85 and 86, which are very famous. They're the issues in which Hal and Oliver discover that Green Arrow's sidekick, Roy Harper, is addicted to heroin, and became addicted while the two heroes were off traveling the country. Other stories in this era include Black Canary being brainwashed into joining a racist gang who plan on starting a race war, and Green Lantern and Green Arrow fighting a remnant group of Axis Power soldiers holding a mining town captive. These issues received critical acclaim at the time for tackling these themes and the subject matter. The two heroes would continue to work together until issue 122, but these issues aren't nearly as well received. Not saying they're bad by any means, but they stop covering real-world issues, and have stories where the pair go to space, and Green Arrow is forced to attack the US president. Dr. Polaris. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 21, released in June of 1963, Neil Urbanson was a dude who loved magnets. He loved them so much that he believed that you could heal yourself with magnetic fields. He became fairly popular as he managed to convince a bunch of people that he was right. But the interesting thing about Neil was that he was, kinda right. Though, instead of being healed, after spending countless hours absorbing magnetic fields, Neil gained the powers of magnetism. This led to him thinking that he absorbed way too much magnetic fields, and so he wanted to ask the Green Lantern to help him drain some of his magnet powers. But it was around this time that his evil persona took over. Oh right, I probably should have mentioned that. When he was a kid, he was raised by an abusive father, and this led to Neil's mind splintering into two, one good and the other evil. Anyways, now that his evil side had taken over, Neil attacked Hal, but would be defeated. And after that, Neil would continue to be a reoccurring threat to the Green Lantern. Or should I say, Dr. Polaris became a reoccurring threat? Neil didn't want to do any of this, but Polaris, aka the evil personality, was in control most of the time. Tired of Neil, Polaris would eventually sell Neil's personality to the demon Naren. Dr. Polaris would fight the Green Lantern and the Justice League multiple times over the years, until he was eventually killed by the hero Human Bomb. Someone else named John would take over the mantle of Dr. Polaris, but he wasn't a Green Lantern villain, so that's all I'll say about him. Polaris made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Direct Currents, released in November of 2016. In this new timeline, Neil wasn't nearly as popular. In fact, he wasn't popular at all. After he came out with a plan to inject iron into people's brains to cure cancer, everyone turned on him, and he was shunned from society. Which, I mean, fair enough. He still had his split personality, and Polaris was still the one in charge most of the time. Polaris would eventually be forced into the 2016 David Ayer film squad, but he was able to escape Waller's grasp eventually. As for his powers, Dr. Polaris has the power of magnetism, meaning that he can manipulate things using their electromagnetic fields. He can also shoot out lightning and fly. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Brave and the Bold, and Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure. The Starbreaker Corps. First appearing in Justice League of America issue 96, released in February of 1972, Luciphage, aka Starbreaker, is a reoccurring Justice League villain who travels around the universe eating the energy of planets. This is because he's an energy vampire, and if he eats all of a planet's energy, then, well, the planet dies, obviously. Being a Justice League villain, he's also fought Green Lantern multiple times. And in the post-New 52 universe, Starbreaker becomes not just a Justice League villain, but also a threat to the entire Green Lantern Corps. In Green Lantern issue 19, released in January of 2025, Nathan Broom, aka Sorrow, more on him a bit later, approaches Starbreaker with a plan. Nathan has the Book of Oa, which has immense knowledge. And so he gives some of that knowledge to Starbreaker, who then summons an entire army of energy vampires, and together they become the Starbreaker Corps. Though it's not really a core, as they're not using the emotional spectrum. Well, I guess they do want to eat the emotional spectrum, so I guess that counts. The Starbreaker Corps are currently causing mayhem throughout the DC universe, as their story hasn't concluded yet.
We'll return with more Justice League.
If you say the Green Lantern's the only powerful force in the universe, clearly you haven't seen the new LG Revolution, a smartphone fast enough for Verizon's 4G LTE network, allowing HD movies to stream without buffering. It's even fast enough to video chat in real time. I gotta go. Plus, the Revolution can be a mobile hotspot for up to 8 of your friends, making it super faster.
That's not a word.
It came out of my mouth, didn't it?
We now return to Justice League.
Green Lantern, the Animated Series Season 2. As mentioned earlier, Green Lantern, the Animated Series, was cancelled due to the poor performance of the live-action film, and the fact that the show didn't have any toys. But that doesn't mean a Season 2 wasn't being planned. We don't know a ton about what this second season would have included, but we do know some stuff. We know that Sinestro would have become a Yellow Lantern, and would have served as the season's main villain, with one of his storylines being about Sinestro framing Hal for his crimes, which would have led to Jon Stewart to show up and help Hal prove his innocence. Hawkman and Arisia were also going to be introduced. The season would have also followed up on the cliffhanger of Season 1, with Razor becoming a Blue Lantern. And that's currently all we know about this cancelled second season. Chip is in Superman 2025. In Superman 2025, there's a scene in which Superman saves a squirrel from being killed. A scene that, for some reason, is controversial. Anyways, there's a fan theory that this squirrel is actually going to return one day and be revealed to be Chip. With how much James Gunn loves the wackier side of Marvel and DC, I have no doubt that Chip will eventually show up in the DCU. But I hate to be that dude who kills a theory, but this squirrel is probably not Chip. Remember, Chip is an alien who just so happens to look like a squirrel. He's not actually a squirrel. This isn't a Dex-Starr situation where he's a non-sentient animal turned into a lantern. Now sure, they could change Chip's origins, but I don't think they will. Rot-Lop-Fan. First appearing in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps Annual Issue 3, released in August of 1987, Rot-Lop-Fam is a rather strange Green Lantern. His species is blind, which isn't weird, but what is weird is the fact that his body is made up of silicone. He lived in some of the darkest parts of the universe before he was recruited into the Green Lantern Corps by the Lantern Katma-Tui. However, due to the fact that he's blind and didn't really know all that many people, Rot-Lop-Fam didn't really understand how being a Green Lantern worked, since he's never actually seen anything before, and has never even heard of colors. This meant that the universal translator that comes with every single ring couldn't actually translate anything related to color to Rotlop Fan. So how did Rotlop Fan become a lantern? Well, Katma turned the ring into a bell, and explained to Rotlop Fan what a Green Lantern was by substituting color with sound. So Rotlop Fan became a sound-based Green Lantern, and didn't really do all that much, since he was living in the far reaches of space. Rotlop Fan would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 20, released in July of 2013. And he still hasn't really done all that much, though he's appeared far more than his previous incarnation, though he's mostly just a lantern that shows up in crowd shots and big battle scenes. As for his powers, he doesn't have your standard lantern abilities. Yeah, shocking, I know, I said something different this time. Rotlop Fan's bell allows him to create solid sound waves that can hurt enemies. The bell also allows him to fly. His species also gives him enhanced hearing, and his silicone body means that he's very resistant to heat-based attacks. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in the 2011 film, the 1997 Justice League of America film. If you thought 2017's Justice League was the first ever live-action Justice League film, you'd be wrong. In December of 1997, a made-for-TV film titled Justice League of America was released on CBS. The film told the story of Tori Olafsdottir, aka Ice, as she gets her powers during a battle between the Justice League and the original villain, the Weatherman. Tori then joins the team, and together they set off to defeat the Weatherman for good. The movie's format is kinda strange, as throughout the film, there's interview segments of the heroes talking about their time fighting bad guys, kinda like The Office. This Justice League's roster was also kinda weird. You had Barry Allen Flash in Martian Manhunter, but instead of Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart, you had Guy Gardner. The Atom was there, but so was Fire. This is because, while the team is called the Justice League of America, the team was actually inspired by the team Justice League International. The film was intended to be a pilot for a potential Justice League of America TV series. However, the show would never be picked up, most likely due to budget concerns, and also the fact that, people didn't really like this film. Critics and fans alike found it to be extremely cheap-looking and poorly written. Fans especially were critical of the film, as the characters didn't really act like they did in the comics. While this film is largely forgotten these days, for a long time, it was the only live-action versions we had of Fire, Guy Gardner, and the Atom, with them later making more well-known appearances in Powerless, the DCU, and the Arrowverse. This show is also the only time that Ice has ever appeared in live-action. Ranks the Sentient City. First appearing in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps Annual Issue 2, released in December of 1986, Ranks the Sentient City is not actually a sentient city. Well, okay, he is, but he's also a sentient planet. He's a massive city that's the size of a planet, so he's basically a sentient city in the form of a planet, if that makes any sense. His origins are unknown, but what we do know is that he's insanely old, and is completely fine with people living on him, just as long as they commit crime. Yeah, his surface was basically Night City, the Coruscant Underworld, Omega, and Neon all combined. So because of this, the Green Lantern Corps were constantly showing up on Ranks to stop all sorts of bad guys. This eventually led to the population of Ranks, and Ranks himself, to hate the Lanterns. This hatred came to a breaking point when Guy Gardner was on a mission to Ranks, and caused some issues, as the criminal he was chasing set off a bomb, leading to Ranks being injured. So Ranks decided to join the Yellow Lanterns, or the Sinestro Corps, and during a giant battle with the Green Lanterns, Ranks would be destroyed. Ranks would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Sinestro issue 12, released in June of 2015. Ranks' backstory was the same as his previous incarnation, including his death. But shortly after his death, Sinestro and the other Yellow Lanterns rebuilt Ranks as a war world, and so Ranks was back in action and more deadly than ever. As for Ranks' abilities, because he's a sentient city, or planet, or whatever, he can control the gravity on his surface, and he can also control various other aspects of his city-like surface. He also has various giant cannons and guns built into him, and he also has your standard Yellow Lantern abilities. Oh yeah, he can also open himself up to reveal a giant set of robotic jaws. It's pretty metal. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in DC Universe Online and Green Lantern the Animated Series. Harlequin. First appearing in All American Comics issue 89, released in September of 1947, Molly Mayne was just your average woman in the 1940s. One day, she discovered Alan Scott's Green Lantern, and was instantly in love with him, so she asked him out, and the two eventually got married. Well, they did get married eventually, but Molly didn't ask him out. Instead, she decided to dress up as a clown, call herself Harlequin, and commit crimes in order to get Alan Scott's attention. Yeah, kind of insane. She would battle the Green Lantern for years, desperately trying to impress him, even joining forces with him on occasion, because while she did commit crimes, she wasn't a murderer or evil, so when somebody who was truly evil showed up, she became a temporary good guy. None of this really impressed Alan all that much, and Molly would eventually give up on him and make a deal with the US government. She would become an agent for them in exchange for her crimes being forgiven. Though eventually, Alan would realize that he was in love with Molly, and so the two got married. But there was a bit of a problem. Alan wasn't aging, while Molly was. So in order to be around the same age as her husband forever, Molly sold her soul to the demon Naren for eternal youth. Alan wasn't very cool with this, and so he and Kyle Rayner teamed up to travel into Hell and rescue her soul. They succeeded, and Molly returned to being an old woman. Luckily for her, Alan would eventually have his anti-aging thingy taken care of, and he would become an old man as well. Molly would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Harley Quinn Road Trip special, released in November of 2015. She had pretty much the same backstory as before, though this time around, Alan would divorce Molly due to him being gay. As for her abilities, she didn't have any powers. Instead, she had some gadgets, like her glasses, which could be used to hypnotize people, create energy blasts, and even create holograms. She also had her own Harlequin car, and used a mandolin during her crimes. Molly may have been the first Harlequin, but she was far from the last. First appearing in Infinity Inc. issue 14, released in May of 1985, Marcy Cooper was the second Harlequin, and was an enemy of Jade and Obsidian, Alan Scott's kids. When the Manhunters attacked Earth, Marcy jumped into action and became the second Harlequin. She would eventually join the villain team in Justice Unlimited, and was killed by Solomon Grundy, after he found out that she took part in a plot to get him to murder the hero Skyman. As for her abilities, she didn't really have any powers, and instead used Molly's glasses, so she had all of Molly's abilities. Next we have just a woman. We don't even know her name. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps Quarterly, issue 5, released in June of 1993, this Harlequin had no real backstory other than the fact that she too was in love with Alan Scott, and wanted to replace Molly as his wife. She tried to convince Alan of this, but he wasn't having any of it. And after she threatened Molly, Alan snapped, and created an illusion of him as the devil, and this woman as his slave. This seemingly snapped her out of her obsession, and she was never to be seen again. Except she did show back up eventually, and was summoned to Hell by Niren, who made her an offer. Work for him, and he would make it so that Alan Scott loved her. But she refused, and that was the last we ever saw of her. As for her powers, she actually did have powers. She had the ability to create illusions. Finally, we have the Harlequin's son, first appearing in the New Golden Age, released in January of 2023. Michael Maine is Molly Maine's son, and maybe Alan Scott's son. Molly refused to tell Michael who his father was, but it's probably Alan. Anyways, Michael became the Harlequin's son after being the victim of a hate crime, and so in the aftermath, he tracked down his attackers, only for one of them to shoot the other attacker. He then blamed Michael for the killing, and so Michael became an outlaw. He would chill out in Los Angeles for a time, tattooing diamonds onto the eyes of domestic abusers when the JSA showed up to recruit him. He very reluctantly joined them, but would eventually break free and go back to doing his own thing. As for his powers, he doesn't have any, but he does have similar illusion-creating glasses like his mother's glasses. Despite there being so many Harlequins, none of them have ever actually appeared in media. Except, kinda, maybe, not really. Harley Quinn's appearance in Justice League Gods and Monsters, which, by the way, is her worst design by far, goes by the name Harlequin, but she's a very blatant Harley Quinn variant, not a Harlequin variant. Olapet. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps issue 217, released in August of 1987, Olapet is yet another strange Green Lantern. It's unknown what her species is, but we know that she's some kind of plant-based species, looking kinda like a bunch of roots in a bunch of wheat. She's never really done all that much, as she's mainly just a weird lantern that appears in background shots and battle scenes. Her most notable story had her teaming up with John Stewart and some other lanterns to battle Sinestro in order to avenge her fallen lanterns, as just before teaming up with John, Olapet's lantern group had been massacred by Sinestro. Olapet would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern Corps issue 8, released in April of 2012. And she's done even less in this timeline, as she has exclusively appeared as background cameos. As for Olapet's powers, she has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, but she has one very special power. She's immortal. Her species can never truly die. Whenever she does die, her mind is transferred over to a seedling that she carries around with her. She then grows back to normal, and the cycle continues, until she runs out of seeds. But I assume she can always get more seeds, so she'll be fine. Corey Reynolds' Green Lantern Trilogy. In 2007, actor Corey Reynolds approached Warner Bros. With an idea for a live-action Green Lantern film trilogy, but he didn't show up to the pitch meeting with just an idea. He had actually written an entire script for the first film, which was going to be titled Green Lantern: Birth of a Hero. Warner Bros. Liked the idea, as they had been trying to get a Green Lantern film off the ground for years. So they accepted the pitch, and production never really began. You see, there was a film being made at the same time, titled Justice League Mortal. It was in development at this time, which is almost certainly why this film got cancelled, as this film was going to have Batman, Superman, and John Stewart Green Lantern in it. And these versions of the characters wouldn't be the same ones from Superman Returns, Batman Begins, and Birth of a Hero. So if they went ahead with this movie, there'd be way too many film continuities for general audiences. They would get confused pretty easily. So Birth of a Hero was cancelled, and then so was Justice League Mortal, which eventually led to the 2011 Green Lantern film being made. Bleeze. First appearing in Final Crisis: Rage of the Red Lanterns, released in December of 2008, Bleeze is an alien known as a Havanian, and was actually a princess on her world. Though her time as a princess came to a tragic end when Sinestro and the Yellow Lanterns invaded her home and captured her, they would bring her to Ranks, where they would torture and R-word Blaze repeatedly. Luckily, she was able to escape, and because of the very justified rage that she felt, she was chosen by a Red Lantern ring, and she happily accepted it. Blaze would quickly rise up the ranks of the Red Lanterns and gain Atrocitus's respect. She would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Red Lanterns Issue 1, released in November of 2011. This time around, her origin was changed. She rejected a ton of people who asked for her hand in marriage. So one day, two dudes who were rejected by her came up with a plan for revenge. They contacted a Yellow Lantern they knew that she would reject, and convinced him to try his luck. He did, and he was rejected. Out of anger, he then killed Blaze's family and captured her. He then R-worded her a bunch, only for Blaze to become a Red Lantern. As a Red Lantern, she would once again rise up the ranks and go on various missions. She was able to rise up the ranks so fast because, due to her traumatic experiences, she had become a being of pure hatred and rage. Though she would eventually calm down a bit when Atrocitus helped restore her mind. And then the two of them killed the two responsible for contacting that Yellow Lantern. Despite this, Atrocitus and Blaze didn't always see eye to eye, and would occasionally fight each other, with Blaze even taking over the Red Lantern Corps for a bit. Though this wouldn't be for long, as Atrocitus would take back his position as leader. The Star Sapphire Corps at one point would try and turn her into a Star Sapphire Lantern, but Blaze refused. But the Star Sapphires didn't take no for an answer, so Blaze had to fight them. Blaze has actually worked with the Star Sapphires before, as she's worked alongside Star Sapphire Corps members as part of Kyle Rayner's New Guardians team. Blaze would even try to terraform the Earth into the Red Lantern's new home base, but of course, she and the rest of the Red Lanterns failed. As for her powers, Blaze has all of your standard Red Lantern abilities, though she can actually fly without her ring, due to her species having wings. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in LEGO Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, Justice League Action, DC Superhero Girls, Injustice 2, DC Universe Online, Green Lantern the Animated Series, DC Legends, Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, and DC Unchained. Floto Span. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps issue 217, released in October of 1987, Floto Span is one of the strangest lanterns out there, which is saying a lot. He doesn't actually have a physical form, and is instead a sentient gas cloud from the planet Inner Tasnia. I don't really know how or why the Lantern Ring chose him, but whatever. He kept the ring in a bubble inside of him. Floto was with Olapet when Sinestro attacked, and was one of the survivors. So he and the rest of the survivors joined up with John Stewart to battle Sinestro and his forces. Span actually performed the final blow on Sinestro's ally, the entity Mad God, by spreading his mass to surround Mad God. He then contracted himself in order to destroy it. The thing is, Mad God is an enormous, godlike entity that controlled the sector 3600, so Span grew to the size of an entire sector of space. A few issues later, Span would die when the Green Lantern power battery imploded. As for right now, Floto Span has yet to return in the post-New 52 universe. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, but because he's a giant ball of gas, he can morph his size, growing and shrinking to whatever size he wants. Gerard Jones's Emerald Twilight. As you probably thought, Emerald Twilight was pretty rushed. What I mean is that production of the story was rushed, not just the story itself. Part of the reason why this was the case was because Emerald Twilight was supposed to be a completely different story written by Gerard Jones. This original storyline was going to be about a Guardians of the Universe civil war, with the Guardians being split down the middle over an issue, and the Green Lanterns would then have to choose which side they would support. Development on the story was going pretty well, and the story was even being advertised. However, DC editor Kevin Dooley found the story to not be interesting enough, so he decided to replace Jones's story with Ron Mars's Emerald Twilight. In hindsight, he probably shouldn't have done that. Though, because he did this, we did get Kyle Rayner, so it's not all bad. Sorrow Lanterns. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 2, released in August of 2023, Nathan Broom was the fiancé of Carol Ferris, aka the main star Sapphire, and her role as the star Sapphire led to the two breaking up. As the day that Carol was to get married to Nathan, that's when the star Sapphire ring chose her to bring her back into the Corps, due to the fact that she was still in love with Hal Jordan, so she flew off, and, Nathan was not very happy. While sobbing in his hotel room, the villain Theros was damaging the emotional spectrum, which was causing the spectrum to glitch. This allowed Nathan's sadness to latch onto his engagement ring, which turned it into a full-blown lantern ring, the Sorrow Lantern Ring, which in turn created the Sorrow Lantern Corps. Though it wasn't really a core. I guess it can become one, but as of right now, Nathan is the only member. And as the Sorrow Lantern, Nathan swore revenge on Carol. As part of his plan to get revenge on her, and also end his sadness, he teamed up with Starbreaker, and using Nathan's Sorrow Lantern powers, Starbreaker was able to create the Starbreaker Corps. Starbreaker and his Corps are currently trying to destroy the emotional spectrum, which would in turn free Nathan of his sadness, and rid Carol of her powers. As for Nathan's powers, he's got your standard Lantern abilities. He can fly, and he can create energy constructs. He can also make others depressed, and his body is constantly spitting out smoke, so he's literally a walking, or a flying, smoke grenade.
Poppin' smoke!
Hal Jordan becomes the Spectre. Remember how I said that Hal sacrificed his life during the final Night storyline, redeeming himself after all of the terrible things he did as Parallax? Well, you might be wondering how he came back to life. Well, that's where the Spectre comes into play. The Spectre is the spirit of vengeance in the DC universe, and is one of the most powerful beings in said universe. The Spectre requires hosts in order for it to do anything on Earth. So when the Spectre's usual host refused to work with him anymore, the Spectre was without a host. So the makeshift hero group, the Sentinels of Magic, worked together and bonded the Spectre with the soul of Hal Jordan. They also did this because Spectre was currently in the possession of the demon Asmodel. Once Hal took control of the Spectre, Asmodel was kicked out of the Spectre and defeated. Hal would then be the Spectre for a few years. Now, the heroes of Earth were a bit worried that Hal would go gaga again, because, I mean, he was Parallax a few years ago, and Hal nearly did go gaga, as Parallax was still inside of him, and he briefly took over Hal and the Spectre, but Hal was able to fight back, and finally separate himself from the monster. Upon freeing himself from Parallax, Hal was guided back to his body by Ganthet, and his soul re-entered his body, fully returning him to life, while the Spectre searched for a new host. Though the Spectre did try to recruit him again, but Hal turned him down. Tattooed Man. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 23, released in September of 1963, Abel Tarrant is a former sailor turned criminal, and during one of his jobs, he was hit with radiation from some strange chemicals. This allowed him to create objects when around the chemicals. In order to keep this ability, Abel did what any sane person would do. He used these toxic chemicals to tattoo himself, so that the radiation would be part of him. Actual insanity. Now having the ability to create objects, Abel became the villain, the Tattooed Man, and would often use his tattoos as blueprints for his constructs. He would fight the Green Lantern a couple of times, but would eventually give up on crime and become a tattoo artist, only to then become a criminal again. In fact, he started working for the Yakuza, and would even join the 2021 James Gunn film squad, though his time as part of the squad would eventually lead him to be killed by Mirror Master. He would return in the post-New 52 universe in 2021 James Gunn Squad film Issue 24, released in December of 2013. He hasn't really done too much in this universe, mostly just being a background member of the Secret Society of Supervillains. As for his powers, he could create constructs that could be used to attack people, and he usually used his tattoos as the base for these constructs. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Justice League Unlimited. Abel wasn't the only tattooed man. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 9, released in April of 2006, Mark Richards is a former US Marine who is presumed dead by the military after a crash. But he survived, and was captured by a local tribe, who then proceeded to torture him for months, until one day they decided that was enough, and he was welcomed to join their people. They would then teach him the secret arts of sin grafting. This was a very strange power. When Mark kills somebody who's evil, he'll then create tattoos on his body, and these tattoos somehow redeem the souls of those he's killed. He could also have these tattoos peel off his body and attack people as some kind of energy construct. When he returned to the United States, he became a hitman, though he would be stopped by Green Lantern and Batman. He would then join up with the Secret Society of Supervillains, and eventually gain the respect of Black Lightning, as during the Final Crisis event, he saved Black Lightning's life. This led to Mark helping the Justice League take on Darkseid, and because of this, he was made an honorary member of the Justice League. This did not last long, as Mark would team up with the Titans Villains for Hire group led by Deathstroke. Though, after helping out on a mission, Mark would leave the team and return to his hometown, in order to protect it from gang violence, though he would eventually return to the Titans Villains for Hire for a bit, but again would leave the team. But by leave the team, I mean the team flat out disbanded, so he didn't really have a choice. Mark would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Heroes in Crisis issue 3, released in January of 2019. And this Mark was a lot nicer, as while he's killed a bunch of people, he turned himself into the Sanctuary, which was basically a superpowered hospital dealing with superpowered people with mental problems and trauma. It's there that he was killed by the villain Savitar. At least, Savitar had thought he was dead. Turns out the hero Gold Beetle had created clones of Mark and the other patients that Savitar had killed, and right before their deaths, Gold Beetle had replaced them with the clones. Mark would later help Flash and his allies battle the multiversal empire, the Fraction. As for his powers, well, I already went over them. Though, when he was working with the Flash family, he was given a vest that gave him super speed, though after that battle, the vest was taken from him. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, Black Lightning, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. Drick. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps issue 217, released in October of 1987, Drick is a rotting corpse. No, really. Drick was a normal Lantern for most of his time as a Green Lantern, but when Sinestro and Mad God attacked, Drick was killed. But for some reason, his ring saved his life and kept him alive, despite him, now being a corpse. He was with Floto Span and Olapet when they joined up with John Stewart and crew, so he took part in the final battle against Sinestro and Mad God. But Drick didn't get to celebrate their victory for long, as when the Green Lantern's central power battery imploded, all Green Lantern rings lost their power. and that meant the power keeping Drick alive went away as well, resulting in him dying, though he would be brought back to life during Blackest night, only to then die again for a third time. Drick has yet to appear in the post-New 52 universe. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern abilities. As for why he was kept alive, the only thing that I can think of is that his will to stay alive was so strong that the ring kept him alive. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Batman the Brave and the Bold. Fatality. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 83, released in February of 1997, Yura Sinril comes from a wealthy family and was raised at a very young age to be a soldier. She was taken off of her homeworld to go and train. Now, what was the name of her homeworld? Xanshi. Uh-oh. Yeah, while she was off training, John Stewart did an oopsie and her planet was destroyed. This led to her to despise the Green Lantern Corps and to swear to track down every single person who's ever been part of the Corps and kill them. Taking up the name Fatality, she began her quest, eventually killing over 100 current and former Green Lanterns. Eventually, she would find Kyle Rayner, and the two would battle it out. The two's fight eventually led to the pair being stranded on an alien world at the mercy of a giant monster. And also, Kyle had told her that John was responsible for Xanshi's destruction. Fatality had won the fight, and had even stolen Kyle's lantern battery. Realizing that they were both going to be killed by the monster, Kyle tried to convince her to give him back his lantern, but she refused, saying that she would rather them both die. Luckily, Kyle was able to get back his lantern and escape, but Fatality wasn't so lucky, and was not actually killed, though Kyle thought that she was dead. Fatality would show back up several times, until she was captured and held prisoner. John would visit her in jail a bunch, both trying to calm her down and also make himself feel less guilty. Fatality would eventually escape and join the Yellow Lanterns, though this didn't last very long, as she would be captured by the Star Sapphire Corps and forcefully turned into a Star Sapphire member. She then continued her mission to take down John Stewart, and when she confronted him, she revealed that her plans had actually changed. Becoming a Star Sapphire member, she realized that John didn't mean to destroy Xanshi, and so told him that he should forgive himself. Fatality would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern New Guardians issue 1, released in November of 2011. She would become a member of Kyle Rayner's New Guardians group, alongside other Lanterns like Bleez. Though this didn't last forever, as the team would eventually disband. And shortly after it disbanded, Fatality would revert back to her hateful and vengeful self after being separated from her Star Sapphire ring. She's since sworn to eliminate both John Stewart and the Star Sapphire Corps. As for her powers, she had all of your standard Yellow Lantern and Star Sapphire powers when she was part of their corps. But she also had some other powers. Thanks to her being a Xanshian, she has superhuman strength, speed, and stamina. She also has the ability to sense the weaknesses in people. She also has various gadgets that she uses, like a bracelet that can turn her invisible, jet boots, and armor that's designed to block energy-based attacks. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, and DC Universe Online. Box. First appearing in Green Lantern Corps Recharge issue 5, released in March of 2006, Box has no backstory. In fact, we know almost nothing about Box. He's just a box. I'm not even sure if he's an alien that just looks like a box, or he's just like an actual sentient box. He's never been explained. He does talk, though, in shapes. Yes, he talks in shapes. I don't really know what that means, but yes, he talks in shapes. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 28, released in February of 2014. The most notable thing that he's done in this reality is work together with some other Lanterns to create a kaiju-sized robot Darkseid to fight Infinity Man. This is a really quick entry because there's almost nothing to say about him. He's just a floating Green Lantern box who has seemingly all of the powers of a Green Lantern. Green Lantern Evil's Might. Releasing from August to October of 2002, Green Lantern Evil's Might, written by Howard Chaykin and David Tishman, is a 3-issue Elseworld story that tells the story of an alternate Kyle Rayner. In this reality, Kyle is living in 1888 New York City. He's a political cartoonist who one day stumbles upon a mysterious Green Lantern, and inside the lantern is a ring. Taking the lantern and the ring, Kyle becomes Green Lantern and fights all sorts of bad guys while he tries to make the world a better place for the immigrants of New York City. Some of these bad guys include William Tweed, the head of Tammany Hall, who's probably the most corrupt person in the city. Then there's Hal Jordan and Alan Scott, who are actually both bad guys in this universe. Hal Jordan is a police officer who is dating Carol Ferris, but when Carol shows more interest in Kyle, Hal snaps a bit and begins to work with some gangs in order to take care of Kyle so that he can win Carol. Then there's Alan, who's just a complete psychopath in this universe. He's a gang leader who just kills people at random, and worst of all, he also gets the power of the Green Lantern Corps. By the end of the story, Hal turns a new leaf, then dies. Kyle defeats Alan, then dies. And Tweed goes to jail, then doesn't die. And Carol becomes the new Green Lantern. Last thing that I'll mention is that the origin of the lantern and the ring in this universe is very different. In this universe, the ring comes from a Blarney stone, and the ring was created by a leprechaun king, and the lantern was created to power the ring using leprechaun magic. Star Trek Green Lantern. Releasing from July of 2015 to December of the same year, Star Trek Green Lantern is a 6-issue crossover miniseries between who else? Green Lantern and the crew of the Enterprise from Star Trek. Though it's not the main Star Trek continuity. Instead, DC crosses over with a variant of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek film trilogy. The story follows an alternate DC universe where Ganthet is the last Guardian alive. In fact, he's one of the last few beings alive, as Necron has won. He's wiped out most of all life in the universe. So in order to escape, Ganthet uses some power rings to transport himself into another reality. However, Ganthet doesn't survive the travel, and dies in this new universe, the Star Trek universe. Eventually, the crew of the Enterprise find his body, and the power rings attach themselves to characters in the Star Trek universe. The blue ring grabs Chekhov, the indigo ring grabs McCoy, the star Sapphire ring takes hold of Uhura, the yellow ring takes hold of the Klingon General Chang, the red ring takes hold of Glokon, and the orange ring takes hold of Preacher Decius. Hal, Carol, Saint Walker, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kilowog are all then revealed to have survived the destruction of their universe as well, and they join forces with the crew of the Enterprise to battle Necron, who's made his way into this universe, alongside Sinestro, Atrocitus, and Larfleeze. And Necron creates a new Black Lantern Corps made up of dead Star Trek characters. Together, they're able to defeat Necron, and the day is saved. A sequel series was released from December of 2016 to May of 2017. Both of these stories were written by Mike Johnson. In the aftermath of the first story, the Green Lanterns aren't doing so hot, as their rings are dying since there's no power battery in this reality. So they decide to try and figure out if an Oa exists in this universe. But before they can do that, they're attacked by Sinestro and a Manhunter. Things get even worse when Atrocitus is killed, and Khan steals his ring, becoming a Red Lantern. And things get even... Did I really just do that? That's like the oldest meme in the book. And things get even worse when it turns out that Oa does exist in this reality, as does the Green Lantern's power battery, and that's when it's revealed that Parallax is also in this reality, and Sinestro frees him. So now Sinestro, Parallax, and Khan are causing chaos across the universe. Luckily, Captain Kirk becomes a Green Lantern, and unites with the rest of the surviving Lanterns to save the day. The Collective. First appearing in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps Annual, Issue 3, released in August of 1987, the Collective is a hive mind of strange orbs. These orbs, or puffballs, were originally not sentient, but after consuming another creature, they gained intelligence, leading to the Green Lantern sent to recruit a being from this sector to allow himself to be consumed. This didn't kill him, but instead gave the orbs full sentience and the powers of the Green Lantern Corps. Just kidding, he actually did die. Yeah, he sacrificed his life so that the puffball orbs could gain sentience. And so, the orbs, known as the Collective, swore to defend Sector 1287. And because there's an insane amount of them, the orbs patrolled the sector without any trouble. In fact, Sector 1287 is one of the safest sectors in the entire DC universe, purely because of how effective the Collective are. The Collective has yet to appear in the post-New 52 universe. As for their powers, they can naturally fly, and have all of your standard Green Lantern abilities. They also have the ability to absorb beings, which gives them increased intelligence. Karu Sil. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 19, released in June of 2007, Karu Sil is an orphan who was raised in the alien jungles of her homeworld. She was raised by 3 alien beasts, and in the process, she began to think that she was one of them, even altering her teeth to look more like them. They lived in peace for a while, until one day they stumbled upon a random villager. Her family attacked the villager, which led to a Green Lantern to show up and kill the beasts, believing that the beasts were not only attacking the villager, but also Karu Sil. This completely shattered her mind, and she was sent off to a medical institution to recover. Well, she was sent to that institution after she killed one of her psychologists. Eventually, she'd be chosen by a Yellow Lantern ring, and she joined up with the rest of the Sinestro Corps. She only did this because, with the power of the Yellow Lanterns, she was able to recreate her dead animal family, so she felt that she was forever in debt to the Corps. Karu Sil would then work with the rest of the Yellow Lantern Corps, along with some other villains, such as Superboy Prime and Cyborg Superman, during the Sinestro Corps War storyline. However, in the aftermath of the event, Karu Sil fled into deep space, only to then be captured by the Sapphire Corps, who attempted to force her into becoming a member of their corps. She was freed by Sinestro and friends during the Blackest Night storyline, which led to her battling various Black Lanterns as well. She even teamed up with a Green Lantern for a bit, but in the aftermath of the fight, she betrayed the Lantern and killed him. Karu Sil would make her debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 3, released in November 2011, and she's appeared a bunch, but she's almost always in background shots in battle scenes. Her most notable appearance had her facing off against John Stewart on the planet of Tali. As for her powers, she has all of your standard Yellow Lantern abilities. She could also perform pretty nasty bites with her razor-sharp teeth. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in Green Lantern Emerald Knights. Hal Jordan turns a dude into a seagull. In Green Lantern issue 7, released in August of 1961, Hal Jordan makes quite the oopsie. Late one night, Hal is asleep, and has a dream about his friend wanting to turn into a bird. This activates Hal's ring, which fires off a beam across Coast City that hits Hal's friend, and turns him into a seagull. Yup, the power ring can turn people into animals. Anyways, when Hal wakes up, he doesn't know what happened, and is pretty confused as to why a seagull is following him around. Later that day, he stumbles upon a plane hijacking in progress, so Hal turns into the Green Lantern to stop the criminals. But he kinda sucks at his job in this issue, as when the plane hits some turbulence, Hal is nearly knocked out. Luckily, right before Hal can be killed, Hal's seagull friend shows up and distracts the criminals long enough for Hal to recover. Hal then saves the day and finally realizes that the seagull is his friend. He then turns him back to normal. Side note, this issue also features the first appearance of Sinestro. Crazy how Sinestro's debut is overshadowed by Hal turning a dude into a seagull.
We'll return with more Justice League.
The universe's greatest superheroes are under attack. Evil Parallax just captured Tomar Ray. Hal Jordan to the rescue with his battle shifter. Parallax releases his prey, but he escapes. The Green Lantern Corps join forces and chase him to Coast City, where Parallax is on a rampage. Unleash the battle shifters. Kilowog's Astro Beast. Tomar Ray's Scorpion Assault. Hal Jordan fires his Battle Fist attack. No evil escapes Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
We now return to Justice League.
First Flight 2. Released in July of 2009, Green Lantern First Flight is a straight-to-DVD animated film, and is probably the best-received Green Lantern film. Despite this, First Flight would never receive a sequel. No, Emerald Knights is not a sequel. It doesn't even take place in the same continuity as First Flight, though a sequel to First Flight was planned at one point. In a 2010 interview with Bruce Timm, who produced the film, Bruce Timm stated that a sequel to First Flight was cancelled due to DVD sales not being nearly as good as Warner Brothers had wanted. The crazy thing is, it did make its money back. It just didn't make the money fast enough for Warner Bros. Parallax possesses Batman. Releasing from December of 2004 to July of 2005, and written by Jeff Johns, Green Lantern Rebirth is a very well-received miniseries. However, this storyline was actually going to be a bit different originally. The original plan still had Parallax be the main antagonist, but instead of Parallax possessing Ganthet towards the end of the story, Parallax was supposed to possess Batman, and the interesting thing here is that Parallax wouldn't have any powers while possessing Batman. This would lead to a completely different ending, in which Hal and the Justice League have various non-powered superheroes hunt Batman down, as they don't want Parallax to possess somebody with powers. These heroes being Green Arrow, Robin, Nightwing, and Black Canary. Please ignore the fact that Black Canary has powers. And at the end of the story, Hal confronts Batman after Parallax Batman shoots Robin in the shoulder. Parallax would then jump back into Hal, but Hal would quickly force Parallax out of him because he no longer has any fear, and Parallax is sent back to Green Lantern jail. Kilowog becomes a Soviet agent. In Green Lantern Corps issue 207, released in December of 1986, Kilowog isn't exactly shown to be a fan of Earth. In fairness, it's not because Kilowog is hateful towards humans, but instead, it's the other way around. Most of the people on Earth have been very racist or xenophobic towards Kilowog and the other Green Lanterns who aren't human. However, in the aftermath of Kilowog and crew beating up the villain Blackhand, the people of Earth start to view him in a more positive light. Though Kilowog still feels down about all of this, and he's starting to have problems with his fellow Lanterns, as he's feeling lonely and feels as if nobody listens to him. That's when he's approached by somebody from the Soviet Union, who explains to him that in the Soviet Union he'd be loved. Kilowog is interested and travels to the Soviet Union, and after spending some time there, Kilowog is just like, "Hey, this is just like home," and officially joins the Soviet Union, and helps the Soviets create their own superhero team, the Rocket Red Brigade. The Green Lantern Corps are pretty shocked by this, but John Stewart and Katma decide to hear Kilowog out, and stay with him in Russia, while the rest of the Lanterns return to America. Though their stay in Russia isn't nearly as nice as Kilowog's, as they're attacked by the Rocket Red Brigade, and not only are they captured, but they're almost executed, as the Soviets don't trust them. Luckily, Kilowog and Guy Gardner find out about this. Guy frees the pair, while Kilowog storms the Kremlin. Believing that Kilowog was a spy this entire time, the Soviets fire a bunch of nuclear missiles at America. Luckily, Hal and friends stop the nukes before America finds out about them. Kilowog then battles his only friend that he's made in Russia, the hero Rocket Red. The two reluctantly fight, which ends with Kilowog accidentally killing him, and so ended Kilowog's run as an agent for the Soviet Union. Amanita. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 20, released in January of 1992, Amanita is a Mascarian, an alien who looks like a mushroom. He's also insanely old, and speaks extremely slowly. You know the sloth scene from Zootopia? Imagine that, but on .25 speed. That's how slow we're talking. But despite his slow speech, he's insanely smart. In fact, his species has an extremely advanced consciousness. He's also an artist, though, like his speaking skills, Amanita is very slow at painting, and also pretty slow at creating constructs. Honestly, he's a pretty chill dude, who hasn't really done all of that much, since he speaks so slowly and he's a giant mushroom man, so it's kinda hard to tell stories about him. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern Corps issue 8, released in June 2012, and he's basically still a background character. As for his powers, he has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Duck Dodgers and the 2011 live-action film Shark. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 24, released in October of 1963, not to be confused with King Shark, Karshan, aka the Shark, is the result of a tiger shark getting hit with a bunch of radiation. One day, a tiger shark was just chilling out, until, boom, he was hit with a bunch of radiation, giving him millions of years of evolution in just a few seconds. Now, while he was given a new form and had a bunch of powers, at the end of the day, he was still a tiger shark, and so he was very aggressive and liked to fight people. But when he realized that normal people would be far too easy for him, he decided to go after Hal Jordan. So the two battled it out, with Shark eventually being defeated and transforming back into his normal tiger shark form. Hal would then place him in an aquarium, and that was the end of Shark. Just kidding, Shark would return numerous times, always being able to transform back into his monstrous form somehow. From alien rays to toxic waste, Shark would always find a way back. That was until Green Lantern blew up a boat that Shark was on, killing him. Except, not really, because he would eventually come back, as he was revived by Guy Gardner during Crisis on Infinite Earths, as part of a mission to take out the Anti-Monitor. Now, you're probably curious as to how he got the name Karshan. He took this name during a plot to become the King of Atlantis. And he actually succeeded for a bit, but Aquaman would defeat him eventually. While Shark wasn't super intelligent, he wasn't a mindless monster. That was until some aliens decided to experiment on him, resulting in him just becoming a crazed monster. He would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps issue 32, released in January of 2018. In this reality, his history is mostly the same, though his intelligence returned. And this led to him becoming a member of the 2016 David Ayer film squad for a bit. Though this didn't last very long, as he would be eaten alive by other sharks and fish at the command of the villain Finn, who wanted revenge on Shark for killing his brother. Luckily for Shark, he somehow survived this encounter, and now works for the villain Theros. As for Shark's powers, he's got superhuman strength and speed, especially in the water. He's also completely fine with eating people, so he often bites his foes. He's also randomly got a bunch of mind powers, including the ability to project fear into people, read minds, fly, fire energy blasts out of his forehead, and he can also grow to the size of a kaiju. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Batman the Brave and the Bold, Justice League Unlimited, Super Friends, and the DCEU. Yeah, they just kind of like took the name Karshyn. She's not really an adaptation of Shark. Not the first time the DCEU did that, but it was the last. Novels. While Marvel and DC characters are mostly known for their appearances in films, cartoons, video games, comics, and live-action shows, that doesn't mean there haven't been some novels based on Marvel and DC characters, and Green Lantern is no exception. There's been 4 different Green Lantern novels released over the years. The first is the Green Lantern Sleepers trilogy, which released from 2004 to 2005. This is a trilogy of novels written by Christopher J. Priest. This trilogy follows Alan Scott, Hal Jordan, and Kyle Rayner. Now, they don't work together, but instead, each book follows a different Lantern set in a different era, with Alan Scott in World War II, Kyle Rayner in the 2000s, and Hal Jordan in the 90s. Book 1 mainly follows Kyle Rayner, Book 2 mainly follows Alan Scott, and Book 3 follows Hal Jordan. The third book is interesting because it actually follows the events of Emerald to Twilight, and is about Hal Jordan as the Spectre. The final Green Lantern novel is Green Lantern Hero's Quest, released in 2005, and written by Dennis O'Neil. This book takes place in O'Neil's Justice League novel series continuity, and is about Kyle Rayner traveling the universe looking for the Justice League who have gone missing. Zilius Zox. First appearing in Final Crisis Rage of the Red Lanterns, released in December of 2008, Zilius Zox doesn't really have a crazy backstory. He was just somebody that a Red Lantern ring chose. What's weird about him, though, is, well, his appearance. He's a Noxagian, which are basically just ball-like beings with razor-sharp teeth and tiny arms and legs. They're like if MODOK went feral, and could also walk. Zilius Zox didn't really do all that much, mainly just being there for background shots. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Red Lanterns issue 1, released in November of 2011. He's continued to be a background character for the most part. He'll get lines every once in a while, but he hasn't really gotten a major storyline. His most notable story had him being used by his fellow Red Lanterns. They forcefully harnessed his rage and hatred in order to power their ship, while the emotional spectrum was in disarray. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Red Lantern abilities. He also likes to bite people, which makes sense because of the big sharp teeth he has. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Green Lantern the Animated Series, DC Superhero Girls, and Justice League Action. Green Lantern 1001 Emerald Knights. Released in March of 2001 and written by Terry Laban, Green Lantern 1001 Emerald Knights is an Elseworld story that's basically what if Green Lantern was merged with Middle Eastern folk tales, more commonly known as the 1001 Arabian Nights. The story is centered around a woman named Scheherazade, a character from Arabian Nights, attempting to assassinate the prince Ibn Raynor, believing that he's evil. However, upon realizing that he's not evil, and that people are simply doing evil in Raynor's name, she decides to tell Raynor some stories, in hopes that these tales will make him act more like a proper prince, so that he can put a stop to these bad dudes. And the stories that she tells him are simply tales from 1001 Arabian Nights, just with a Green Lantern coat of paint. The first is a Green Lantern version of the story Aladdin. The second is a Green Lantern version of the Adventures of Balukia. And the final is an original story, I think. I mean, this whole story is original. The first story is a Green Lantern version of Aladdin, but the second and third stories are original sequels, with the second story taking heavy influence from the Adventures of Balukia, and the third story I think is just completely original. Though I'm no expert in Middle Eastern folklore, so correct me if I'm wrong. The final story has a big genie battle, which leads to all of the genies dying, and having their power turned into a ring that Aladdin, or Al Jordan, wears and uses to rebuild his city after it gets destroyed. Oh my god, I just got it. It's like Hal Jordan? Why'd that take me so long to realize? The story ends with the prince and Scheherazade defeating the prince's advisor, who was the one behind all of the bad stuff going on, and then they rule in peace. Oh, and Scheherazade is also a Green Lantern. Hal Jordan and Wonder Woman were going to be a couple. In the 1970s, Jack C. Harris was writing the Wonder Woman comics and editing the Green Lantern comics. And so he had the idea of partnering the two up. In fact, this wouldn't just be a team-up. He planned for the two to start dating. However, this idea was dropped for a very unique reason. Around the time that Harris was planning this, a fan sent in a letter to DC Comics. And in this letter, they suggested that Wonder Woman and Green Lantern start dating. This basically killed Harris's plans, as if he went ahead with this, the fan would probably start claiming that DC had stolen his idea, and this would cause a whole bunch of drama. So Hal never got to date Diana because some fan had the same idea as Harris. Rejected Powerless Guy Gardner comic series. Around the time of the Zero Hour storyline, Guy Gardner lost his Yellow Lantern ring. Yeah, he was a Yellow Lantern for a bit. He's also been a Red Lantern and a Star Sapphire Lantern. Anyways, the original plan for Guy was that he wasn't going to be a Lantern anymore, but instead, he would be a powerless hero going on various adventures, with nothing but his fists and his wit. Described as being an Indiana Jones-type hero, this was something that author Bo Smith was super into, but DC wasn't. Issues 22 and 23 of Guy Gardner Warrior are the only two issues in which Smith was able to do this. DC editor Eddie Berganza told Smith to give Guy some powers. He didn't have to be a Lantern, but he couldn't be a dude without powers, because, apparently, comics about characters without powers don't sell. I don't think that's true, but whatever, that's what DC wanted. And so, Smith was forced to cancel this powerless Guy Gardner storyline, and instead, he gave Guy some rather strange powers that I'll talk about a bit later. The First Lantern. First appearing in Green Lantern Annual Issue 1, released in October 2012, Volthoom is one of the most powerful beings in the DC multiverse. He's the first person ever to wield a power ring, which makes him the First Lantern. Unfortunately, he's not a good guy. When he was much younger, he and his mother discovered the emotional spectrum, and they decided to harness the power and create a device that would allow them to travel through time and space. They were just chilling out when suddenly his planet got destroyed. Volthoom escaped and dedicated himself to figuring out how to use the device they had created, aka the Travel Lantern, and figure out a way to save his universe. Every reality that he traveled to, he failed to find a way to bring his world back. That was until he found the main DC universe. In the year 10 billion BC, the alien race, the Malthusians, created the very first power battery, and out of that power battery came the first ever power ring, a ring that Volthoom quickly took for his own. And so, Volthoom became the first ever Lantern. He would help out the Maltusians with their technology and experiments, even having the first power battery implemented into his chest. This had a not-so-good effect on his mental health, as he eventually became insane, and he even attempted to wipe out the Maltusians after being told that he was the reason why his planet was destroyed, which was true. In the future, he had come back in time with the original ring and somehow accidentally destroyed his planet, basically creating a closed loop. He killed thousands of Maltusians, but would eventually be defeated. He would then be locked up for billions of years. Should probably mention this now, the Maltusians are actually the Guardians of the Universe, so they knew where he was in case they ever decided to give him another shot. And they eventually sorta did. Some of the Guardians decided that the Green Lanterns had failed at being a good police force, so they began taking pieces of Volthoom's DNA and used it to create a replacement for the Green Lanterns, called the Third Army. Eventually, Volthoom would break free and decided that he wanted to end the universe and rebuild it from scratch. So he captured the Guardians of the Universe and a bunch of Lanterns and began to take their power, and he probably would have succeeded if not for Hal Jordan bringing in Necron to take him out. But Volthoom didn't die. Or, well, he did, but he can't actually permanently die, and so he's returned to life with a new plan to take out the Green Lantern Corps. Oh, right, you might be wondering if he's related to the Ring of Volthoom. And, he is. During his travels throughout the multiverse, he traveled to the Crime Syndicate of America's universe, where he worked with a sorcerer to create a ring out of Volthoom's soul, and this ring would end up being Power Ring's ring. As for Volthoom's powers, he has every single power from every single Lantern Corps. He's also practically immortal and can regenerate from injuries, and can even teleport. He can also grow extremely tall, and he practically doesn't age thanks to his connection to the emotional spectrum. Cancelled SNES game. In 1991, Ocean Software was developing a Green Lantern game for the PC, though this game didn't get far into development before being cancelled. But 2 years later, in 1993, the game would have its assets salvaged and placed into a brand new Green Lantern game for the SNES. This game took heavy influence from Green Lantern issue 23, released in September of 1963, and would have been about Hal Jordan battling a bunch of alien bugs. However, that's when the Emerald Twilight storyline began releasing, making DC request Ocean Software to replace Hal with Kyle Rayner and incorporate elements of Emerald Twilight. Development was going fairly well, but the game's development began to fall apart when a leadership change on the project occurred, and by this point, the Zero Hour storyline had occurred in DC Comics. So DC wanted Ocean to now change their game to reflect that storyline. This required more money to be thrown at the project, something that Ocean wasn't willing to do, as the SNES was nearing the end of its lifespan, and so for nearly 30 years this game sat dead. But then, in 2020, it was still dead. But a prototype of the game was discovered, and footage of the game was uploaded online. Dirketsy RRR. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 188, released in May of 1985, Dirketsy RRR, I guarantee I'm mispronouncing that. Like, come on, how do you pronounce that? This guy is without question the weirdest Green Lantern. In fact, he's probably the weirdest Lantern, period. I'm not going to pretend to understand him, but essentially, he's a living mathematical equation. Now, how does a math equation become a sentient living thing? I don't know. I assume it has something to do with it being a super complicated formula. Because of how bizarre this dude is, he hasn't really had any stories based on him, and he's barely ever appeared, and also has yet to appear in the post-New 52 universe. Which, I mean, fair enough. What stories can you tell with a sentient mathematical equation? As for his powers, he has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, but he also has the ability to enter somebody's brain and then wipe it out. Like, straight up delete all of their cells, memories, everything inside of the brain. As you can probably guess, not every Green Lantern was morally okay with this ability. Emerald Interlude. The Emerald Twilight storyline, aka Hal Jordan Going Goofy storyline, was originally supposed to be explored a bit more. Green Lantern Emerald Interlude was going to be a 3-issue miniseries written by Paul Kupperberg, released sometime in the early 2000s. This miniseries was going to be part of the Legends of the DC Universe comic series, an anthology series featuring various different characters and authors. The point of the series was to fill in gaps and plot holes in the DC universe. However, Emerald Interlude would be cancelled, due to Legends of the DC Universe being cancelled in 2001. We don't know too much about this story, other than it would have had Sinestro in it, and the story was going to be about how Hal came to the conclusion that he wanted to rebuild the DC Universe in 0 Hour. Green Lantern and Huckleberry Hound. Released in October of 2018 and written by Mark Russell, Green Lantern Huckleberry Hound is a one-shot crossover comic between Jon Stewart and the Hanna-Barbera cartoon character Huckleberry Hound. The story is interesting because you'd think a crossover like this would be like super goofy and silly, but no, it's actually very serious. The story takes place in the 1970s, shortly after Jon Stewart becomes a Green Lantern. One day, he finds Huckleberry Hound just chilling out at a bar. Huckleberry Hound's become an outcast to his fellow celebrities, as he's been very vocal about being against the war in Vietnam. But Jon still likes him, and he tells Huckleberry how much of a fan he is. The two then trade stories, with Jon talking about his time in Vietnam, and how he and his family have been victims of police brutality, while Huckleberry Hound tells Jon stories about how he grew up in Mississippi and grew up in a neighborhood littered with Klansmen. The two then notice some corrupt cops harassing a group of people, so the two head over and stop the police, with Huckleberry even getting a gun drawn on him. The two heroes then go their separate ways. The Phantom Lantern. First appearing in Green Lanterns issue 8, released in December of 2016, Frank Leminski is a dude who just wasn't very special. He was just your average guy, and he hated that. In order to get some attention, he joined the US Air Force, only to almost die while piloting a test plane. Luckily, Hal Jordan saved him, and this led Frank to want to become a Green Lantern, so he began to practically worship the Green Lantern Corps, getting in shape in order to get the attention of the Green Lanterns, even becoming a vigilante. He kept tabs on every single Green Lantern sighting on Earth, and over time, got really mad, because after he saw Jon Stewart, Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner, and Simon Baz get chosen, he just lost all hope. Especially the last one, as the Green Lantern ring literally went up to Frank and told him that he was chosen, before it was revealed that the ring had actually malfunctioned, and was actually supposed to go to Simon Baz. That's when Volthoom comes into play. He showed up one day and decided that Frank would be a perfect pawn. He told Frank about the Phantom Ring, a ring created by the Guardians of the Universe that could defeat the Green Lanterns, in case they ever went out of control. So Frank stole the Phantom Ring from Raimi, a member of the Guardians of the Universe who was exiled on Earth. With the ring, Frank decided to become a superhero, the Phantom Lantern. But Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz were a bit confused when they found him, as they realized that he wasn't a true Lantern. Frank freaked out and battled the two, only to be defeated. Because while he did have a bunch of power, he was very inexperienced. He was then locked up in the Watchtower. Now, why did Volthoom tell him about the Phantom Ring? Simple. With Simon and Jessica fighting Frank, nobody was guarding Raimi, and so Volthoom captured Raimi and stole his body, imprisoning Raimi's soul while he took control of his body. Anyways, as for Frank's powers, the Phantom Ring gave him the abilities of every single Lantern Corps, so on paper, he should be extremely powerful. But, like I said, his lack of experience prevented him from becoming a bigger threat. Oh yeah, and he was also a living bomb. Frank didn't know this, but the Phantom Ring actually makes the user explode if used too much. The Zeggers. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 8, released in October of 1961, the Zeggers are a very obscure species from the future. You might be wondering why they look like Gila monsters, and that's because they are. Yeah, somehow about 2,000 years in the future, Gila monsters will have evolved into fully sentient, human-sized reptiles with the ability to give themselves superpowers. Yeah, they got powers. They can shoot lasers out of their eyes, but these lasers aren't actually lethal, but instead, they're shrink rays. Yes, these are Gila monsters with the ability to shoot shrink rays out of their eyes. Though this ability isn't actually natural, it instead is the result of a machine that the Zeggers built. Hal Jordan battled these guys when he was abducted into the future. The Zeggers made their debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern Corps issue 27, released in March of 2014. In the post-New 52 universe, Zeggers actually exist in the present, but they aren't from Earth. Instead of being evolved Gila monsters, they're actually just an alien species. And here it's revealed that they have some microorganisms that live on them, which can easily create plagues. And so, the Zeggers have accidentally wiped out several civilizations. Oops. Planet of the Apes Green Lantern. Releasing from April to September of 2017, Planet of the Apes Green Lantern, written by Robbie Thompson and Justin Jordan, is a 6-issue crossover miniseries between DC and the original Planet of the Apes film series. The series serves as an alternate sequel to the original Planet of the Apes film. Shortly after George Taylor goes missing, when he's captured by the mutants, Cornelius discovers the Universal Ring. This is a very special lantern ring that allows anyone who wields it to use the powers of any of the Lantern Corps. Once Cornelius touches it, power from it surges throughout the multiverse, which reveals that the Planet of the Apes exists in an alternate dimension that has the planet trapped in a time loop. Sensing the power, the Green and Yellow Lanterns send Hal and Sinestro to investigate it, which leads to the two getting sent over to the Planet of the Apes reality. Once they arrive, their rings are drained of power due to the Universal Ring. Hal is then quickly captured by the apes, while Sinestro captures Dr. Zaius in order to convince him to help him so that he can have his own monkey army. Now you're probably wondering, what happened to Cornelius? Well, after putting on the ring, Cornelius investigates the mutated humans living underground. And during his investigation, he discovers that Taylor is dead, and that the humans are worshipping the Cobalt Bomb, a bomb powerful enough to destroy the entire planet. So Cornelius disassembles the bomb. By this point in time, the Universal Ring has begun to corrupt Cornelius's mind, and so he uses the ring to create some power rings for the mutants, and he recruits them into his own mutant army. Meanwhile, Hal breaks free of his confinement thanks to Dr. Zira and the primitive human Nova. They're then met with Kilowog, Guy Gardner, Arcia, and Gorilla Grodd. Yeah, the Green Lantern Corps basically forced Grodd to help them on this mission because, well, he's a gorilla. But uh-oh, the Red Lanterns have discovered the planet of the apes, so they invade. And a giant fight ensues, with Hal Jordan, Sinestro, the Green Lanterns, the Gorilla Army, Gorilla Grodd, the Red Lanterns, and Cornelius and his army of mutants and apes all battling it out. Nova also joins Cornelius's army, taking great pleasure in taking out the species who've hunted and enslaved her kind. Hal and Sinestro are eventually able to defeat Cornelius and free him of the Universal Ring, but Zira, Atrocitus, and a bunch of others all lie dead. And Sinestro being Sinestro, he immediately betrays everyone, only to then be attacked by Zaius. Realizing all of the destruction that this ring's caused, Cornelius puts it back on and destroys it, dying in the process. Except not really. He was actually just transported to the main DC universe. Meanwhile, Gorilla Grodd was captured by the apes, and is being interrogated for information about the DC universe. And that's how the story ends, on a cliffhanger that'll never get resolved. Gnort. First appearing in Justice League International issue 10, released in February of 1988, Gnort Esplanade Niesmacher is a joke character, as you can probably tell by the name, but he is canon to the main DC universe. Gnort became a Green Lantern after being fooled by some fake Guardians of the Universe. They were trying to find the dumbest people around the galaxy to give Green Lantern rings to in order to cause chaos and to hurt the credibility of the Green Lantern Corps. Guy Gardner would step in and stop these fake Guardians, and he also decided that Gnort may have what it takes to be a real Green Lantern, and it just so happened that Gnort's uncle was a well-respected member of the Corps, so Gnort was accepted. Now, Gnort is a Gnutian, an alien that looks like a humanoid Scottish Terrier. Side note, Guy Gardner's been shown to be into his species. And just like a dog, Gnort is brave and loyal, but he's also kind of stupid, and not that great of a lantern. Gnort showed up time to time as a comedic relief character, a guy that was just there for goofs. For example, he would often beg the Justice League to let him join the group, but they always refused. Though he would eventually join Justice League Antarctica, a group created by Maxwell Lord just to get rid of him, along with a bunch of C and D-list villains in the process of being redeemed. Gnort seemed to like it in Antarctica, as while Justice League Antarctica disbanded, he would create the group Super Buddies Antarctica, though nobody would ever join. So yeah, Gnort mostly stuck to comedy stories. Though there was that one time he was shown to be extremely depressed when his home planet was destroyed, and his entire family was killed. He would make his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern New Guardians issue 16, released in March of 2013, and he's continued to be a joke character, popping up time to time doing wacky stuff. Probably his most notable story was when he teamed up with Larfleeze. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern abilities. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Duck Dodgers, Justice League Action, Batman the Brave and the Bold, and Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure. The Limbo Lantern. First appearing in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Blackest Night, released in November of 2019, this Sinestro variant did a big old oopsie. During the events of Blackest Night, Sinestro had to give up the power of the White Lantern, and give it to Hal Jordan and friends in order for them to defeat Nekron. But what if Sinestro refused to give it up? Well, then Nekron wins. Yup, Nekron kills the life entity, and then kills every single Lantern in the universe, besides Sinestro, since he was still a White Lantern. Sinestro's a bit bummed out at being the reason that the universe is wiped out, so he attempts to Avengers Endgame himself, But this doesn't work, and instead, Sinestro becomes half White Lantern and half Black Lantern, the Limbo Lantern. But luckily, he's still got a bit of White Lantern in him, so there's still a chance to save the universe. Joining up with some of the final survivors, Dove, Lobo, and Mr. Miracle, the crew come up with a plan to use a Mother Box and the White Lantern Ring to revive all of the Black Lanterns into White Lanterns. This plan doesn't go very well, as Nekron and his forces arrive to stop them, and a big battle occurs. Mr. Miracle is actually the reason why the plan fails, as he realizes that their plan won't actually revive everyone, but instead will kill all of the Black Lanterns. So he kills Dove in order to save his zombie wife, Big Barda, only for him to then be killed by Lobo. So Sinestro goes with Plan B, and uses Lobo to finish the plan, as Lobo has regenerative cells. And the plan works. All of the Black Lanterns are destroyed. But it's still the end of the universe, as in the aftermath, the universe is now filled with people just like Lobo, meaning that the entire universe is in a constant state of war, and so Sinestro was forever trapped in this nightmare reality. Chassalon. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 9, released in December of 1961, Chassalon may not be the weirdest lantern, but he's one of the earliest weird lanterns. Chassalon's species doesn't have a name, but we know that members of his species are basically crystal balls with mohawks. Yup, they don't have limbs. Chassalon's limbs are actually mechanical, and they were given to him so that he could be a better Green Lantern. Chassalon was a good friend of Hal Jordan's, and fought alongside him in various battles, including battles against Nekron, the Weaponers of Quard, and he even took part in the Sinestro Corps War. That being said, while he's taken part in a bunch of battles, he doesn't have too many stories about him. His most notable story was probably when Hal Jordan nearly killed him during Emerald Twilight. But he was a very well-respected Green Lantern, even being promoted to Alpha Lantern status, basically the most elite of the elite, who police not only the universe, but also their fellow Green Lanterns. Despite his elite status, Chassalon would be killed during the Blackest Night event. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern New Guardians issue 16, released in March of 2013. And he's continued to be a background lantern who will occasionally say something, but is usually always just in background shots during big fights. As for his powers, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern powers, but he's also got 13 senses. What are these extra senses? No idea, because I don't think we can comprehend them. He's also very difficult to kill, as his body can be shattered to pieces, but as long as his core is okay, he can regenerate his crystal-like body. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in the 2011 live-action film First Flight, Duck Dodgers, Green Lantern the Animated Series, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Emerald Knights, Justice League Unlimited, and Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. Well, his corpse appears in it. The Puppeteer. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 1, released in August of 1960, Jordan Weir is one of Hal Jordan's very first villains. As for his backstory, he doesn't really have one. He just got up one day and was just like, yeah, I'm thinking crime. So he decided to do a bunch of robberies, which led him into conflict with Hal Jordan. This didn't go so great, and he would be defeated. And this would be the only time the two would ever face off against each other one-on-one. They would meet again, but this time, Puppeteer was part of a group called... Well, they didn't really have a name, but he was working with Getaway Mastermind, Captain Cold, Electric Man, Professor Menace, and Clock King. Basically a bunch of D-list characters besides Captain Cold. But Hal wasn't alone either, because he wasn't even there. Yeah, I lied. The Puppeteer never met Hal again. Instead, in this story, Hal was actually part of the villains. He was actually the villain Dr. Destiny in disguise, who was trying to trick the Justice League into falling into a bunch of traps. Anyways, this plot would fail, and Jordan would actually end up going straight, and he began to work for the company Dayton Industries, though he would eventually return to crime, and join the group Hive, and even battle the Teen Titans. This run with Hive ended in disaster, as after failing to steal a formula from his former employees, Hive turned on him, which led to Jordan being a wanted man by both law enforcement and the criminal underworld. And that was basically it for him. He made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Adventures of the Super Sons Issue 1, released in October of 2018, and in the post-New 52 universe, he hasn't done very much. His most notable story had him being nearly killed by the villain Joker Jr. As for Puppeteer's powers, he doesn't have any. Instead, he uses a device called a hypno-ray, which allows him to mind control people. He would often hypnotize other criminals into doing his dirty work for him. He also used robots and dolls occasionally, which also had the ability to mind control people. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Justice League Unlimited, Scribblenauts Unmasked, a DC Comics adventure, and kinda Teen Titans. The character wasn't called Puppeteer, but it's clear that he was inspired by the Puppeteer. Sinson. First appearing in Green Lantern Issue 4, released in December of 2023, Sinson, or Korg, might be the son of Sinestro. His mother abandoned him on the planet Zela, and he would be named Korg after his homeworld, Korugar. He was raised by a local crime boss, and he worked in a street gang. At some point in time, he became convinced that he was actually the son of Sinestro. He tried to leave his planet in order to find Sinestro, but was stopped by the crime boss and his henchmen. So Korg beat the crap out of him and became the new crime boss. Taking up the name Sinson, he renamed the gang into the Sinson Corps. He would rule over his gang until one day the son of General Zod showed up. Sinson would then try to steal his ship, which led to the two to fight, eventually leading to the two of them and the ship to be swallowed up by a giant space whale. Luckily, the whale was somewhat sentient, and Sinson was able to convince the whale, which could teleport because of course it can, to teleport them to Sinestro. Upon being teleported to Sinestro, the two of them joined Sinestro's forces and helped him rebuild New Korugar. It's there that Sinson told Sinestro that he believed that he was his son. Sinestro was just like, okay, maybe you are my son. It doesn't really matter though. You grew up without me, so I don't really care. Yeah, Father of the Year award material right here. Though, I mean, this is the same guy who forced his daughter to become a Yellow Lantern, so I guess this is in character for him. This led the two to fight each other, with General Zod's kid, Lord Zod, jumping in to back Sinson up. Only for Sinson to get mad at Lord Zod for attacking his maybe dad, and decided to fight him instead. But that's when Sinestro was like, "Psych! I was just joking around. I wanted to manipulate you two to see if you guys were tough. Alright, I'm gonna leave now. You guys just chill out here." And so, Sinson and Lord Zod decided to call themselves the Sinister Sons, and become the Guardians of New Korugar. As for Sinson's powers, Sinson was somehow able to use the powers of a Red Lantern, despite not having a Red Lantern ring. He also has brass knuckles with a built-in taser that were designed to look like Yellow Lantern rings, though they would later be modified to look red. Warrior. For a time, Guy Gardner used a Yellow Lantern ring, Sinestro's Yellow Lantern ring. In fact, Guy had to beat up Sinestro's ghost in order to take his ring from him. But Guy continued to be a good guy for the most part, now going by the name Warrior. After the events of Emerald to Twilight, Guy and friends confronted Hal Jordan, only to get their behinds handed to them, with Guy having his ring destroyed and being put in a 3-week-long coma. Now not having any powers whatsoever, Guy joins up with the hero Buck Wargo and some monster hunters and traveled to Africa in search of the Water of the Warriors, a mythical body of water that if drank would give you superpowers. During this adventure, he battled some very interesting foes, including zombies, remnants of the Axis powers, and dinosaurs. Yes, Guy Gardner fought Axis Powers soldiers riding dinosaurs. He would eventually find the water and drink from it, and upon drinking it, Guy didn't actually get any powers, but instead he unlocked powers that he never knew he had. Turns out, Guy Gardner is actually a hybrid between a human and a Vuldarian, an ancient, long-dead species who could transform their bodies into weapons, armor, and other combat gear. But how can he be a hybrid if Vuldarians went extinct ages ago? Well, it turns out when a Vuldarian and a human being bang, their offspring isn't going to be a hybrid. Instead, it takes several generations for the hybridization to happen, and Guy was the result of it. And so, Guy Gardner, as warrior, continued his fight against crime, now with new powers. He also met a new foe, Dementor. He was another Vuldarian hybrid, but was evil, and Guy had to take him out. Guy would also run a bar called Warriors, where he would meet up and work with a bunch of different heroes. He would continue to operate as Warrior until one day he would lose his Vuldarian shape-shifting powers when Parallax took control over his body for a few and literally forced his body to reject the Vuldarian part of his DNA. He would then return to being a Green Lantern. Some of the other stuff that Guy got up to as his time as Warrior included going to a toy convention, fighting Superman, getting his gender swapped for a bit, and battling his evil clone Joe Gardner. Yeah, his time as Warrior was a bit crazy.
We'll return with more Justice League.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern First Flight. Six Flags introduces Green Lantern First Flight, America's first vertical spin coaster. Save $25 at sixflags.com. Now with the most coasters on the planet.
We now return to Justice League.
The Kyle Rayner and John Stewart DCAU switch-up. Everyone knows that the main DCAU Green Lantern is John Stewart, but he wasn't the first DCAU Green Lantern. That would be Kyle Rayner, who would debut in Superman the Animated Series. But this wasn't the original plan. The original plan was for John Stewart to debut as the first Green Lantern in the DCAU, but because Kyle Rayner was currently the main Green Lantern in the comics, it was decided to have Kyle take John's place. While movie comic show synergy is pretty infamous now, it's not anything new. The Sinestro Corps War animated film. So some people believe that an animated film adapting the Sinestro Corps War storyline was cancelled sometime in the late 2000s. However, this isn't true, or at least it was publicly never announced. The only reference to an animated Sinestro Corps film comes from a Wizard World Los Angeles panel in 2008 with DC editor Dan DeVideo. He was asked about future DC animated projects, and in response, he said that he would like to see a Sinestro Corps War film be made. This wasn't confirmation, this was just his opinion. Now, yes, it's possible that this was some kind of tease, but personally, I don't think so. Green Lantern Camelot. Green Lantern Camelot is a rejected Elseworld story that would have been written by Ron Mars, Unfortunately, we don't know when Ron Mars pitched the story, but we know his idea for the story had a bunch of Green Lantern characters reimagined as King Arthur characters, with Alan Scott being King Arthur, Hal Jordan as Lancelot, Carol Ferris as Guinevere, and the rest of the Lanterns, including Guy, Kyle, and John, would be the Knights of the Round Table. He also revealed that he also pitched an idea for an Elseworld story in which Hal, John, Guy, and Kyle become the Four Musketeers. It's unknown why these pitches were rejected. The only thing that I can think of is that they were pitched at the time of DC kinda abandoning the Elseworlds branding in the mid-2000s. Kevin Smith Green Lantern film. So this is a film that didn't end up happening, not because of DC or Warner Bros., but because the writer just didn't want to do it. In 1997, while Kevin Smith was working on the film Superman Lives, probably the most infamous canceled superhero film, DC approached him with an opportunity to write a live-action Green Lantern film. However, Kevin Smith declined the offer because he thought that there were writers out there that would be better suited to write a Green Lantern film. The Order of the Black Suns. First appearing in 4D War, a comic featured in the Doctor Who magazine, released in March of 1981. Hey, wait a second, this isn't Green Lantern. The Order of the Black Sun is a mysterious group who fought in the First Great Time War. This group consisted of a bunch of different alien races, who carried around tiny black orbs on their hands. These orbs allowed them to shoot out energy blasts. Now you're probably wondering why I'm talking about some obscure Doctor Who group. Well, this is because they're actually an alternate universe Green Lantern Corps. Kinda, not officially. Their creator, the legendary Alan Moore, has said that these guys are the Earth 5 version of the Green Lantern Corps. Despite this, DC has never confirmed this to be true, since this would be a legal nightmare, as not only are they Doctor Who characters, they first appeared in a magazine that was being published by Marvel Comics. So yeah, these guys are kinda, sorta, alternate Green Lanterns. Bionicle is canon. From 2001 to 2010, DC published a Bionicle comic series that lasted 46 issues. The series itself had absolutely nothing to do with Green Lantern, but because DC had the comic licensing for Bionicle, there was an Easter egg related to them in the main DC universe. In Spectre issue 10, released in December of 2001, Hal Jordan is the Spectre, and he shows us a few alternate realities, and one of these realities features 4 of the Toamata from Bionicle. This technically confirms that the original Bionicle universe takes place in the wider DC multiverse. Now, will they ever do anything with this information? No, of course not. We're Bionicle fans. We're made to suffer. AIDS PSA comic. In The Flash Iceberg, I talked about how in 1992, DC created a bunch of PSA comics talking about AIDS and HIV. I don't cover topics twice, but I want to briefly mention the Green Lantern PSA comic, because it's pretty unique. Instead of just one comic, DC created 2 different Green Lantern comics, and they're the exact same with one key difference. One of them features Hal Jordan, while the other one features John Stewart. It's the exact same comic, same writing, it's just that Hal was replaced by John, or John was replaced by Hal, whichever one was released first. Larvox. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 9, released in December of 1961, Larvox is another pretty early, weird-looking lantern. Larvox's species is unknown, but we know that they're genderless, insect-like things. They have no sense of individuality, which made Larvox special, as they did have individuality. Larvox has 6 arms, 6 legs, long flowing red hair, and a single eye. Though originally Larvox just had 2 tentacle-like arms, but this was later retconned away. Larvox also doesn't have a mouth, which means that they're mute. They can only speak through their Green Lantern Ring's translator. Larvox hasn't really done too much. He's yet again another background lantern. Larvox made their debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern issue 20, released in July of 2013, and they've continued to just be a background lantern. The most they've done is be parts of the Dark Crisis storyline, particularly the part where everyone gets Black Adam powers. God, they really wanted to make Black Adam an A-lister all because of Dwayne Johnson. As for Larvox's powers, they have all your standard Green Lantern powers. As for their appearances in media, they've appeared in Green Lantern the Animated Series, the 2011 live-action film, Duck Dodgers, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. Green Lantern the Image. In the mid-1980s, comic writer Len Wein had plans to introduce a brand new superhero to the world of DC. While writing Green Lantern, he planned on writing a storyline introducing the character of the Image. And if readers ended up liking the Image, he even had plans to ask DC to let him write a solo series about him. And so, the Image was teased in several pieces of promotional material, and then he never showed up. It's unknown what happened, but this Image storyline in the Green Lantern comic series never happened, despite it being promoted. All we know about the Image is that he would have been the result of some experiment done by Clay Kendall, April O'Rourke, and Jose Ramirez. IMEX Sub. Only appearing in Green Lantern Corps issue 33, released in April of 2009. IMEX Sub is a very minor character who shows up and dies almost immediately. He was a Yellow Lantern who was captured by Arisia. He's only notable because of his face and his name. For some reason, it was decided that this guy should look like the actor Steve Buscemi, and so it was decided to name him IMEX Sub, which is Buscemi spelled backwards. There's literally nothing else to add. He was just a reference to Steve Buscemi. Thomas Kalmaku. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 2, released in October of 1960, remember Hal's friend who got turned into a seagull? Well, he has a name, but I purposely didn't mention it because I wanted to talk about him here, because there's a little fact about him that justifies him being so low on the iceberg. Thomas is one of Hal's closest friends, and worked as a mechanic at Ferris Aircraft. He was actually one of the first people to find out that Hal was the Green Lantern, and acted as a kinda sidekick of sorts, and even a kinda biographer. He eventually got married, had kids, and nearly Avengers Endgamed himself. He almost went bankrupt and would have gone through with it, if not for Hal talking him out of it. So Thomas carried on, and his family left him. Though he would get his family back after getting a bunch of money from NASA. Eventually, he would be chosen to be part of a superhero team called the New Guardians. These were people who were given powers during the events of the Millennium storyline, and they were meant to be the next step in human evolution. But Thomas was like, nah, and refused to join the team. Though he would be given powers, but they were very vague powers. He had the ability to, quote, bring out the best in people, and he could use this ability to calm people down. It was basically that one shout from Skyrim. Thomas made his debut in the post-New 52 universe in Green Lantern New Guardians issue 0, and he's barely appeared since. His most notable story had him be part of a crew who dropped a nuclear bomb on the evil Batman known as the Merciless. So I know what you're thinking. This guy just sounds like your standard side character. Why is he this low on the iceberg? Well, that's because for quite a long time, Thomas had a nickname that was given to him by Hal Jordan, and this nickname was a racial slur. Thomas would eventually tell Hal to stop calling him that, but this was in 1979. So for 19 years, this dude was exclusively referred to as a slur. Hal would then call him a slur again in 1988. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in the 2011 live-action film Replicon. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 108, released in September of 1978, Replicon is an alien monster whose real name is Zum. His species was going extinct, and he needed to find a planet that could host his two offspring. Luckily, he found one, Earth. Problem is, though, Replicon kinda needed to, sorta get rid of the ozone layer in order to make the planet safe for his offspring. But we kinda need the ozone layer. Replicon's species is a gas-like creature, but he can transform his body to mimic people around him. So he transformed himself into a human named Andre and started to learn about Earth. More importantly, how to destroy the ozone layer. He also did battle against Hal Jordan, Green Arrow, and Black Canary when he took the form of a combination between Batman, The Flash, and Wonder Woman. They battled Replicon as he tried to release a bunch of chemicals into the air to destroy the ozone layer, but the heroes came out on top when Hal trapped Replicon and his unborn children in a container and flew them back to Replicon's asteroid base. Hal is then successfully able to convince Replicon to just, not destroy the Earth. So Replicon chills out on his asteroid, and eventually Jon Stewart shows up and actually fixes the place up, makes it very, very lively. And eventually, his children are born. They would live on the asteroid for years, until the villain Ruin mind-controlled Replicon, and brought him back to Earth in order to fight Superman. Superman obviously beat him, and Replicon died. As for Replicon's powers, he's originally a gas-like being, but can transform himself into solid bodies. He could also copy the appearance and abilities of others, so he was able to steal the abilities of Green Lantern, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc., meaning that he could fly, had superhuman strength, could shoot lasers out of his eyes, and create energy constructs. Green Lantern of 2029. First appearing in The Last Days of Animal Man, issue 2, released in August of 2009, unfortunately, this weird lantern isn't actually canon to the main DC universe. Instead, they're from the Last Days of Animal Man universe. And as you can see, this Green Lantern, who comes from the year 2029, is a whale. Just a full-on whale. He is sentient, however, and saved Animal Man's life when he began to lose his powers while flying. He also would stop the villain Bloodwraith by cutting off his oxygen, which is kinda crazy. He doesn't really do all that much in the story, outside of inviting Animal Man to join the animal-themed team, the League of Titans. As for his powers, he has all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, and I assume he can still do whale vocalization in the ocean. Jamie Sanchez. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 120, released in September of 1979, Jamie Sanchez, aka El Spectro, is one of the more unique Green Lantern foes. You see, Jamie Sanchez is a conquistador, basically a conqueror from Spain who partook in the colonization of South and Central America in the 15th century. Sanchez was buried alive, but instead of dying, he actually gained immortality. This was because he drank from the Fountain of Youth. But because he was buried alive, he was trapped underground for centuries, which led to him going insane. In the 1970s, he would be freed from this horrible fate, and, as you'd expect, was pretty confused about this new era he found himself in. In his confusion, he started attacking people, which led to Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Black Canary showing up to stop him. Well, Sanchez actually attacked them first, so it was really the heroes acting in self-defense. Now, you'd think that Sanchez would be a very easy bad guy for them to fight, but thanks to the Fountain of Youth, not only was he immortal, but he also had superhuman strength and speed. And because his sword was also made out of gold, it could deflect and cut through Hal's Green Lantern constructs. They battled him for a while, and this fight continued to a plane and even a battleship. But eventually Sanchez would be defeated, and the last we see of him, he's being taken away by the US military. So I imagine Sanchez is still out there in a cell, or being experimented on. Probably both. The Aerial List. Only appearing in Green Lantern issue 35, released in March of 1965, Otto Fisher was a circus clown who fell in love with a trapeze artist working at the same circus as him. He would have asked her out, but he had a feeling that she just wasn't into him, and he thought that because he was a clown and not an acrobat. So in order to win her over, he began to practice acrobatics, and went on to create a suit that had built-in magnetic motors that could create solid fields of magnetic energy that he could use to perform stunts. I know it's like a really obvious and common joke, but why didn't this dude just sell this? He could have been a millionaire. Anyways, he was gonna show off to her and tell her how he felt. But then a random act of God happened, and she was killed by a bolt of lightning. Believing that Ferris Aircraft was responsible for her death, as the circus was performing near there, he swore vengeance on the company. So he tried to crash some test planes, and pin the blame on Green Lantern. The plan didn't work out so well, and Hal easily defeated him. And he never showed back up. As for his powers, I already went over them. He was able to fly and do stunts using his magnetic motors built into his suit. He also had a gun that fired magnetic bullets. Muck-Muck. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 21, released in August of 2013, Muck-Muck's species looks like a fish, and his lantern suit makes him look like a fish wearing a sweater. Muck-Muck didn't really do all that much. His most notable stories had him working in the Green Lantern Corps prison, directly under the Warden, and he was once captured by the alien race, the Durlans, who replaced him with a spy, which led to Muck-Muck being accused of being a traitor. He also speaks with a gargly tone, since he's a fish. Well, an alien that looks like a fish. Perhaps Muck-Muck may have gotten a beautiful story of love, betrayal, and redemption, but no, he died. Pretty brutally, too. He was literally turned into a skeleton within a second. As for his powers, Muck-Muck just seems to have your standard Green Lantern abilities. Ring of Evil. In Green Lantern Annual issue 3, released in September of 1994, we're introduced to an Elseworld story called Ring of Evil. The story starts at the end of World War II. Heinrich Himmler makes a deal with a demon that sucks out the souls of 12 Axis Power soldiers and places them into a yellow ring for Himmler to wear. This ring gives Himmler a ton of power and allows the Axis powers to win the war. 30 years go by, and a resistance has formed against the Germans, called the Lantern of the Green. Green Arrow and John Stewart are members of this group, and John is actually given leadership of the resistance, only for a bunch of Germans to find their base and massacre the entire resistance. And guess who led this team of Germans? Guy Gardner. Hal Jordan, a friend of Guy's, meets up with a man named Abin Strauss, who explains to Hal that he had killed Himmler years ago, upon seeing Himmler fall under the control of a witch named Corellia, who wanted the ring for herself. But now, Strauss was too weak to guard that ring from her, and so he gives it to Hal in order to keep it safe. He then dies, and his soul is sucked up into the ring. Hal then stumbles upon the woman that he's into, Carol, in bed with John Stewart, and he's pretty shocked. That's when Guy Gardner shows up with his own ring, created by Corellia, and he captures Carol and John. Hal finally realizes that the Axis powers are not very good, and so breaks the two of them free and beats up Guy. But that's when Corellia shows up and reveals that she's actually the demon that Himmler made a deal with ages ago. John then kills her, and then Guy kills Hal. John then takes Hal's ring and uses it to fight Guy. But Hal's ring isn't nearly as powerful as Guy's, so John calls out to the fallen members of the Lanterns of Green, who are used to create Guy's ring. and their souls answer John by jumping out of Guy's ring into his. Guy is then killed, and his soul is then placed in John's ring. John then declares that he's gonna free the world from the Axis powers, and the story ends. The Anti-Green Lantern Corps. Only appearing in Green Lantern issue 150, released in March of 1982, the Anti-Green Lantern Corps is a rather unique Lantern Corps that had a very brief existence. For about a century, the Quardian Empire was developing its own power battery and power rings in order to take out the Green Lanterns. And they finally succeeded, but there was one major flaw in the ring's design. In order to use the rings, their soldiers had to have their brains modified, which tied their brains to their power rings. And so, when their power rings ran out of juice, the soldiers would die. Realizing that this was quite the critical flaw that would destroy any chance at taking out the Green Lanterns, the Empire raced to find a way to fix their rings. So they tried to convince Hal Jordan to join them in order for him to help them develop their rings. As around this time, Hal was leaving the Green Lantern Corps, so they thought that he would willingly join them. He obviously refused, and so the Anti-Green Lantern Corps decided to abduct him. They're able to briefly turn Hal evil, but he's quickly broken out of the trance by his fellow Green Lanterns. And so Hal and friends annihilate the makeshift Anti-Green Lantern Corps battery, ending their power ring program. As for the Anti-Green Lantern Corps' powers, their rings ran off of antimatter energy, and so they fired antimatter blasts. They could also fly and create antimatter constructs. Paul Manning. Remember how I mentioned that Hal Jordan was transported into the future to fight mutated Gila monsters? Well, this was done by a group called the Solar Council, and they didn't really want to mess around with history. So when they summoned Hal to the future, they wiped his brain and gave him fake memories, making him believe that he was a man named Paul Manning, and they did this to Hal several times over the next few years. And as part of this scheme, Solar Council member Iona Vane pretended to be his girlfriend, but over time, she would actually start to genuinely love Hal. Eventually, Hal would figure out what was going on, and Iona even confessed her love to him, but he declined since he was currently dating Carol Ferris. So he decided to then wipe her mind of him. Her mind would get messed with even more when the Solar Council accidentally brought the Green Lantern Salak into the future instead of Hal. They gave Salak the Paul Manning personality, and then messed with Iona's mind to think that Salak was always the Lantern who had been Paul Manning. Hal, Arisia, and Chip would also get summoned to the future during this outing, as Salak needed backup. In fact, this was actually the mission that Chip betrayed the Green Lantern Corps that I mentioned ages ago. After the mission, Salak would continue to live in the future as Paul Manning, while the others traveled back to the present. Though this didn't last, and Salak would eventually abandon the Paul Manning identity and returned to the present as well. Oh, and there's one more Paul Manning. In Green Lantern issue 51, released in March of 1967, Hal's subconscious caused his power ring to create an actual Paul Manning, who began to cause chaos in the future. So Hal traveled to the future to stop this homunculi, or Topla, or I don't know, this thing. Hal Jordan arrests God. In the Green Lantern issue 3, released in January of 2019, Hal Jordan is sent on a mission to arrest the Judeo-Christian God. At least, that's how the story was promoted. In actuality, this big-bearded white dude named Shepard just looks like a stereotypical depiction of God. In actuality, the Shepard is a Terravore. These are horrific Lovecraftian-like entities who pretend to be godlike in order to gain trust, which then allows them to eat entire planets without anyone trying to stop them. The Shepherd took the form of the Judeo-Christian god and won the rights to the Earth in a galactic auction. He claimed that he was simply a collector of planets and wanted to protect humanity from cosmic forces. But in reality, he sprays planets with a mist that makes everybody stupid. And so, over the next 1,000 years, he fattens the planet up and then eats it. So once Hal found out that this dude purchased the Earth, he showed up and beat him up. Lieselpan. First appearing in Green Lantern issue 188, released in May of 1985, Lieselpan is probably the most insane idea for a Green Lantern. You see, Lieselpan is a virus. A very specific virus that humanity was able to wipe out. Yes, Lieselpan is a sentient form of smallpox. Because of this, he didn't really hang out with other Lanterns, or really anyone, because while he wouldn't ever mean to, being near him puts you at a risk at getting smallpox. And since he's literally the size of a virus, so he's microscopic, it's not like you can see him and just avoid him. You gotta, just stay very far away from him. Despite this, Lieselpan did have a lantern partner, Rimas, who was just your standard alien lantern. The two became friends and would work together to protect Sector 119, until the day when Despotilus showed up and killed 85% of all life in the sector, including Rimas. Despotilus is yet another sentient virus. He's an alien virus created from a bioweapon who joined up with the Yellow Lantern Corps. And so, Lieselpan swore vengeance on this other virus. And he got his chance for revenge when during the Sinestro Corps event, Despotilus infected Guy Gardner, so Lieselpan entered Guy's body and had a microscopic war inside of him. Luckily, Lieselpan won and arrested Despotilus. As for Lieselpan's abilities, he's got all of your standard Green Lantern abilities, and he can also spread smallpox. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen and MBs. That was the Green Lantern Iceberg. I hope it was worth the wait. I know I've been... I guess I haven't been teasing it, but I did promise this video a while ago. And, I've made a couple superhero icebergs since the Wonder Woman iceberg, but it's been a while since I've done a proper DC iceberg. I mean, like I said, it's the DCEU one, but comic heavy DC iceberg. It's been a while. It's been far too long. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was a lot of fun to make. If you got to this part in the video, comment below saying that Dex-Starr is a good cat, because his story is really sad, and it's just so sad. It's such a goofy idea. Oh, it's a footy cat, haha, footy cat. And then the story is just oh, that's the saddest thing I've seen in a while. That's horrible. And before I end the video, I have to give a shout out to my awesome channel members. I keep saying it in every video, but it blows me away that you guys support me financially. I can never truly express how much that means to me. Thank you for everything. And this obviously includes Maurice Deceased, Adam Depp, Digital Medic, Lone Thunder, Jordan Tubby, TJ's Hole, The Mr. Train Track, Cowboy Tuba, Solid Fricky, Steven, Killam, Janet, King Fenrir 1987, Wojtek Watchkiewicz, Infinity Mark, Derry, Papega, Domeshot 529, Sailor Stell, Mano, J-Max Air, Fabio Borges Jacob, Guardian of Brooklyn, Notorious J, Paco, Dats J, Cody Lester, Milo the Mighty, V for Voltex, Nora, Goat449, Hunter Gentle, Metaphysical Loaf of Bread, The Lazy Ngibot, and Moxie. Like I said, guys, thank you so much. This means a lot to me. It's been a rough year. Not even just for me, but just, for everyone, really. And this stuff means a lot to me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay safe and all that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Not the next iceberg. There will be, obviously, another iceberg. But there will be a video between now and the next iceberg. So, yeah, see ya in the next video. Stay safe and all that, and I will see you guys later.